Good morning. This is the Eager Beaver Show.
You are listening to a True North Eager Beaver Media Incorporated podcast. True North Eager Beaver podcasts are proudly brought to you by our founding sponsors, the Miss V Mysteries from Corvid Moon Publishing, your source for science fiction, fantasy, and cozy mysteries featuring a broad diversity of characters. PsychicTarot.ca, book your tarot reading and unlock your spiritual journey. And the Pepper Master, hot pepper sauces made from farm-fresh ingredients to thrill your taste buds and expand your mind. Well, good morning and hello, kids, and welcome to season 5 and episode number 666.
666
of the Daily Beaver Morning Show. 100% Canadian. Today, recording day is Tuesday, June 10th, 2025. And as you can see from the reflection on my face, it is a gorgeous day here at the Beaver Lodge. Sunlight and all that kind of stuff. I am your host, the Eager Beaver, pronouns he, him, hey, Mr. Beaver A. And with me, as always, is my good friend, Mr. Grizzly. A big thank you goes to our podcast founding sponsors, the Pepper Master, the Miss V Mysteries from Corvid Moon Publishing, and I forgot I was going to say PsychicTarot.ca, but that's not it anymore. Yes.
No, that's it.
Yes, yes, it was Canadian Tarot.ca, PsychicTarot.ca. Some days.
You put post-it notes.
Yeah, you got to make sure it's right. PsychicTarot.ca. All right, Mr. Grizzly. Interesting show because some things have happened yesterday. How's your mental health today, sir?
Well, according to my sleep monitor, I slept 5 hours last night. I don't feel like I slept at all. It doesn't cover me when I fall asleep on the couch, which happened, I don't know. I went out to get some food for dinner, went for a bit of a walk. And on the way home, I was like, I just want to go home, go to bed. And that was at like 6:30. So I got home and I had a bite to eat, and then I sat down on the couch. Next thing you know, the national anthem was playing on the hockey game, and I got through the national anthem. Then it was the third period.
Well, you didn't miss much.
I think, well, not quite the third period. I don't know. I'm not sure what time. I wanted to do an ASMR last night, and I fell asleep. I woke up, and it might have been the second period. I'm not even sure. I was groggy, so I watched the end of the game, and I'm like, well, that was ouch.
Yeah.
That happens, though. It's the playoffs, man. It's a 7-game series. I said it would take 6 or 7, so
a lack of discipline. Oh, my God.
Oh, yeah. There was a lot of that last night.
You know what? Every now and then you get a feeling, right? In all the other matches, when a goal was scored quickly, right off the bat in the match, right? I'm thinking, okay, no big deal. But this one, I don't know. Is like when Florida scored that first goal, I was like, I just had the sense like, yeah, I think that's the match right there, pretty much. And of course, it wasn't in the sense that Edmonton did score one, so they needed at least one more for a game-winning goal. But yeah, it was like, did y'all show up?
Well, undisciplined for sure. There were quite a few fights last night, which is
Oh my God,
not common in a Stanley Cup final.
My Beaver Sweet even noticed. It's like, and he's like not a hockey fan at all, and it's like, but he's doing some work and listening to in the background. Says, "My God, they're always fighting."
Yeah,
Like, I think I like tennis better.
it was a rough game. There were some really questionable calls, so I could understand how Edmonton would get PO'd and get a little bit rougher.
Yeah.
There were some really questionable calls. Penalty-wise is what I'm getting at. It just, the too many men on the ice, that was undisciplined. They had 7.
7. Like, how
And
too
and it
many
was
men.
not even it was like, "Guys, you're not gonna get away with that one."
Right. I
You're
mean,
just
it's
not.
like, but that's the first time in my life I think that I can remember too many men on the ice. 7.
Mhm.
Like, how do you do that?
Yeah,
6,
that
I
was just
understand. How do you do 7?
that's undisciplined. That's undisciplined. And I mean, there's often you'll have the too many men, but you've got 2 people, 1 or 2 skating off, 1 or 2 are coming on.
Exactly.
So, but this wasn't like that. This
No.
was I'm looked at, they showed the high ice camera, and I went, "Oh, shit." That's not even a mistake, like, that you can't argue with that one. It was, it was not a pretty game. It was not
Yeah.
a pretty game.
Yeah, I endured through it. Like, when it got to 2-1, when it got to 2-0 or something like that, I'm, like, thinking, "Yeah, maybe I should do more stuff for the show tomorrow," and then I said, "Well, it could turn around." Then it got to 3, and it's sort of like,
Yeah.
I should probably pull the pull the chute on
Well,
this
when
one."
they
And I didn't. I stayed there, and I stayed there for the entire misery.
well, they pulled Skinner. Was that the 3rd period? Like, it's a little gray to me. I don't know. They pulled him last night. Was that in the 3rd period? I
Uh,
don't know if I didn't see the 1st period.
yeah,
I may have seen part of the 2nd. I was half asleep, bleary-eyed. Anyway, they pulled Skinner, and that was not done because he was playing poorly.
yeah,
That's just trying to rally the team.
yeah, in the 3rd.
It was the 3rd, yeah.
Yeah,
That's just to rally the team is all that is. It's like,
yeah,
"Okay, guys, let's," because they lose confidence. Let's rally the team. They're
yeah.
gonna bounce back from this. I mean, come on, they forced 7 games last year. Do you really think they're gonna roll over? No, they're not
I
gonna.
hope not.
No, they're not gonna roll over. No. Hey,
But, yeah,
don't
that
you just
was that
Florida's
was
a good team. You don't win the Stanley Cup.
I know you can't just give away a game
No,
like
but
that.
they did last night, yeah.
Ah, man. I see that happen in tennis too every now and then. It's like, the person gets a break and then all of a sudden it's like, "Oh, I got some confidence," and then they just play this loose game and it's like, "Why?" Oh, man. Alright, but hey, like this, we don't jump off the bandwagon because of one game like you said. Like this. Everybody's entitled to a bad game.
Yeah,
But,
I mean,
but it's just that, when the stakes are so high, man, you can't just afford to give one away. Speaking of, sports, Summer's doing it again, man.
yeah,
Set another world record. Okay, so 3 races, a world record in the, 400 free, Canadian record in the 800 free, and then, a world record again, yesterday. Uh, Again, I do not know what to say. There's not enough words in the English dictionary anymore.
I just stand back and watch in awe.
200-meter IM, and apparently, according to, the manner in which, Devin Haru, described it, was as smashed,
Mhm.
the record. The previous record
10-year record, yeah.
Yeah, the previous record was 2:06:12 set by Katinka Hosszú of Hungary, and, I believe, that she completed it in, she went under 2:06.
205.70.
Yeah, 2:05.70, so that's 0.42 seconds over 200, and that's a lot.
That's a lot.
That's a lot.
Summer's only
Wow.
18. I thought she was 19. She'll be 19 in August, so she's still only 18 years old.
Yeah. She's now the world record holder in, 3 long course events. So the 400-meter individual medley and 3 short course world records. Well, sorry, the 400-meter individual medley in addition to the 200 individual medley and the 400 free that she just set, as well as short course world records. So short course is, long course is, a pool that's 50 meters in length beginning to wall, and short course is 25 meters wall to wall. So she also holds the world records in the 400-meter freestyle, 200-meter butterfly, and 400-meter individual medley in the short course. So she holds 6 world records right now.
Mm. 6 world records before her 19th birthday.
Just, oh my God. She said, it's been one of those records that's always been in the back of my mind since trials 2 years ago. I've been knocking on the door on this one. I've just tried to chip away at it to finally do it. It's kind of like, wow, I finally got that done.
Mm.
Okay. Again, let me put this quote again. Oh, yeah, I've been wanting to break that world record for a while. It's like, wow, I finally got that done. Check. Like, that's the way she's talking about it.
Not cocky, confident.
Wow. I like that.
I think every Olympics she's in from here on out for the next number of years will be called the Summer of Summer.
Wow. Jeez.
Because forget about it, man. Forget about it.
Like, I mean, I get setting goals high.
Mhm. Well,
That's
I've
like,
got
I would like to
the
get this
race
record.
here in the background. I can see it in my screen. I'm not going to show it because it's CBC Sports will get dinged. But I'm looking at it and doing the backstroke on the back 50. She is like 3 body lengths ahead of everybody.
And it's only a 200-meter race.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's like in long course, it's just 4 lengths.
Yeah. Exactly.
There's only 3 flip turns.
And then she's doing the breaststroke now, and she's just gaining. It's unbelievable how talented this young lady is.
God, jeez. All right, kids and cubs. Before we move on, I wanted to address something because I've been getting a lot of requests to do a show about C2, and why
Yes.
haven't I done a show about C2 yet?
Mhm.
The very simple reason, and I'll be completely honest, C2 is a huge sweeping bill.
It's
I think,
140 pages. I've got it up here. I'm starting to read it, but
yeah,
it's
yeah, and I'm not going to go through 140 pages.
no, I'm going to, but here's the thing. I'm trying to parse out what would be we would want to address the most, because there's so many parts and subsections, and
Yeah,
it's like
but
literally in part there's short title. Part 1,
yes,
Customs Act, amendments to the Act. 5, transitional provisions. Part 2, there's like 20, how many parts altogether? Hang on, I'll get to the end. I'm looking at, right now, I'm not even at the end, and I'm at part 14, 150.155. It just
yeah,
keeps going on and on.
yeah,
197 different sort of points.
yeah. So I'm not going to go through 140 pages without some type of basis of understanding to be able to grasp it, because this is touching probably 12 to 14 different various laws, and then in certain ways, and each one of them will have a potential civil liberties
Hmm.
thing with it. And the way that text is written sometimes in the law can be deliberately broad. So it could just sound really innocent and innocuous, and you don't know where the blind spot or where the gap
Yeah.
could be when things are written that way. So my objective is, this is beyond my capacity as a person, right? I have an understanding of law and certain principles, but I have no legal background. And then when we're getting to issues of national security and all that kind of stuff, even less. So my objective is to reach out to the Canadian Civil Liberties Association and have someone as a guest who can walk us through it from that perspective. And that way, when we have that type of understanding from that point on, I'd be able to give some comments or whatnot. Because at the moment, anything I would do would be completely um, not fully informed. Uh, all I can do at this moment is basically relate what it is that I read and what I hear, but I don't have any thoughts of my own in that sense. The only thought of my own that I have at this moment, based on what I've heard here, is that there's a lot of stuff in this bill that could have been there from in a bill that Harper would have proposed at the time,
Mhm.
which makes my ears prick up. And there's a lot of things like, for example, gaining access at ports, for example, like this, to warehouses and stuff like that without a warrant, if suspicious activity is suspected. Like, for example, if somebody thinks that there's a container that in which people are being smuggled, because you don't want to wait. In that instance, you want to be able to go in and get the people
Mhm.
really quickly before they can be moved again, or they die because there's lack of air or whatever, right? You want to act quickly. So that part I understand. But what does that, giving that power, opening that door, like, how circumscribed is it? Is it really circumscribed to allow only that, or is it broader and can it be played upon? And those are the things, right? The subtleties and the nuances. So I know enough to know that there are a lot of questions and there's a lot of potential for things to go wrong with this, depending on all the fine print and whatnot. And I don't have the expertise. So this is going to be one of these situations, unfortunately, where I'm not going to deal with the topic and give a hot take because I would rather. This is too important, and I would rather that our take definitely be much more informed. And for that, I will need to talk to somebody that
We're going to
has
need a
much.
constitutional lawyer, number one, I think, and
Yeah.
somebody who can really address this because a lot of this is over my head.
Yeah.
I'm reading through part 14 right now, and this is just the summary of part 14.
Yeah.
And there's so many, part A, and then under part A, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 points. Part B, C, D. It just goes on and on and on.
Yeah.
So, yes, we will address it.
Oh, yes.
It's not that we don't care to. It's just that neither one of us is nearly expert enough to truly say, this is the bad part, this is the good part, this is the part that we should all pull our hair out on over.
Right. And this is the part that people are screaming about that you really don't need to worry about as well, because you're going to get views from different.
Yes.
That will try to exploit whatever this is like this for whatever their personal objectives are. So I just don't want you to. I want you to understand that the goal for us when we try to comment is we try to have some type of value added,
Informed commentary,
right?
not just opinion.
Because sometimes we just have to relate because that's all we have. But we would like to be able more to just relate than what we hear or something like that. So we thank you for your patience. We will get to it. But yes, in terms of doing the show, because we want it to be more than just reading it to you. We want to put, like I said, some value added coming from us. But for that, we need to get up to speed on a lot of these things. And listen, even if we do this, we'll be far from experts on this, even with help of the Canadian Civil Liberties Association and other people that we will talk to, because the law is about interpretation, right? So that's why properly written laws are important, just like properly formed questions are important for us as well. I don't even know which questions to ask.
Yeah. Well, it's again, it's 140 pages. It's written in legalese and legal speak, and it's done that way intentionally because everything is written that way. But it's supposed to be, because this is a public document. It's supposed to be written for somebody who can understand it at a 5th grade level, right?
Okay.
Well, any government release, and this is a public document, but it's not like a formal press release, if you will.
Okay. Oh, the backgrounder and stuff.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, because press releases have to be written for somebody who has a 5th grade reading level. And even then, sometimes it's very difficult to get it to that because of how it's written. So part 14, point E, is amends the Controlled Drugs and Substances Act and the Cannabis Act to provide and clarify authorities by which computer data may be examined. I'm not sure what that means. Exactly.
That's what I mean. It's broad.
Well, I'll read part 15 to you. Enacts the supporting. This is just the summary. Part 15 enacts the Supporting Authorized Access to Information Act. That act establishes a framework for ensuring that electronic service providers can facilitate the exercise by authorized persons of authorities to access information conferred under the Criminal Code or the Canadian Security Intelligence Service Act. Part 16 amends the Proceeds of Crime Money Laundering Act and Money Laundering and Terrorist Financing Act to permit a person or entity referred to in Section 5 of that act to collect and use an individual's personal information without the individual's knowledge or consent if A, the information is disclosed to the person or entity by a government department, institution or agency or law enforcement agency, and B, the collection and use are for the purposes of detecting or deterring money laundering, a terrorist activity financing, or sanctions evasion for a consistent purpose. Look, I'm reading from the National Post put out a thing here, and it's what is it? They've circled it. It says the wild overreach contained in the Liberals' new border control bill. It outlaws paying cash for anything costing more than $10,000. So this is right from the bill. It says offense: cash payments, donations, or deposits of 10,000 or more. 77.5 in parentheses 1. Every person or entity that is engaged in a business, a profession, or the solicitation of charitable financial donations from the public commits an offense if the person or entity accepts a cash payment, donation, or deposit of $10,000 or more in a single transaction or in a prescribed series of related transactions that total 10,000 or more. That's pretty broad based, and the problem there could be what if I'm buying a car and I pay cash $12,000, or if I buy a car and it's $12,000 and I give them 2 payments of $6,000, it's still $12,000. I've committed a crime according to this. Paying more than $10,000 in cash would become illegal. Now I understand the reasoning behind that is it's to slow down and stop money laundering. But that's so broad-based. Like, how do you cover that? I mean, you don't have the personnel to cover every single cash transaction in Canada. It's just not possible.
Yeah. So, and then, like I said, it might just be some type of check that needs to be done like this, or that type of transaction just may not be permitted at all anymore. And then again, is it a domestic transactions or international transactions, electronic transactions, or again, it could be a lot of things. So yeah, so hopefully we will get some help with that, and we'll be able to bring you more at that time. And of course, we'll keep on reading on it, and and the commentary that's going on, and try to pick up things along the way. But yeah, I would probably, I would feel safer and feeling that we're doing the mandate that we've taken for ourselves, complete it much better if we had help for this one. This is not one I can just read on my own and then come up with stuff. Because it's different than and I know what people are asking it because I did the federal court decision thing, right? But that one I could read the decision, right, and see the logic behind it, and by that time, there had been a lot of this. By the time it got to that time in court, there had been a lot of discussions in the public sphere,
right,
like over a year and a half, 2, and like this, you pick up some things, and you see the patterns that emerge in the discourse, and the things that have proven that have fallen by the wayside over the time that people were making a panic about before, and all that kind of stuff. So that one was easier for me in that sense. But this one
it's going to take a lot more reading, and we're going to need some experts on this.
Yeah.
Part 7 amends the Immigration and Refugee Protection Act to, among other things, eliminate the designated countries of origin regime. Yeah, not sure what that means. That sounds rough.
Yeah. So we will work on it. So please, but thank you for all the requests, and just know that we do have it. We do have it on our list, and we will be at it. All right. Today, I want to get into the stuff because there is a lot with regard to the announcement yesterday. Prime Minister Mark Carney had a media availability yesterday around, I think, 10 a.m. And it was going to be about defense, and that was announced, but we didn't know exactly at all. There wasn't much hinting as to what it would be. And turns out it was pretty big. A very, very big announcement, in fact. Mark Carney announced that we will be reaching the mythical 2% of GDP spent on defense, as we had committed to with our NATO partners. This, I guess, by next year, at some point by March of next year. That's a big boost to defense spending all of a sudden, which of course raises a whole bunch of questions. Where are you going to find the money? How are we going to pay for that? What type of things are we going to do? And those are natural questions. It seems that there are certain things that there's some debate about whether or not There are things that weren't counted before that are counted now. When I'm listening to interviews with the Chief of Defense, Jenny Carignan, um, it seems that that's not so much. There's no creative accounted using here that NATO actually um, sets out guidelines, and all the partners agree, and all everybody follows the same accounting system when it comes to calculating that 2% of what is included and what is not included. So, for example, if you have things that are not headquartered in national defense, like for example, the Canadian Security Establishment, and they're doing some stuff on AI and cyber that does contribute to national defense, even though that's with the CSE, it still gets counted. So you can take things from various departments and throw them in there, so long as it meets those criteria. So there's that. Um, the boost in spending seems to be based on what I've been hearing in the interviews and all that kind of stuff, focused more on people than equipment, in the sense that it does involve equipment, but in the sense that paying people well, um, also which also will have an impact on recruitment and retention. Uh, and then, of course, um, equipping those people well to be able to do the job, to bring a lot of our capacity that we have, a lot of it is offline, because it's in disrepair and the parts are not available to repair it, or we can't afford the parts or whatever, or even if we did have the parts, we don't have the technicians to be able to do that type of work, because you know, you need the money and the equipment and the people who are trained, and it seems that we have to work on all of those 3 simultaneously here, to get to a state where, rather than less than about 50% of our equipment or personnel are ready to be deployed, to about 80%. Because at any given time, you're going to have some stuff that's in disrepair or whatnot, or needs to be repaired, so it would never be 100%. But if you can get to about 80%. So it seems that that is to get us to that amount of readiness, and to make sure that the people are well paid, well equipped, well protected. So it's very, very people focused. So it's not things like big submarines yet and all that kind of stuff, right? But it might be things like more drones. It could be things like more artillery, uh, you know, and stuff of the like. Repairing certain pieces of equipment, labs and stuff like that, so that they are better operational and can be used, and all those things. So it's a first basis, of course, and which draws a lot of criticism. Well, that what's that going to do to help us get the submarines back into the water? Because we have 4 of them, but only one is operational at the moment. Probably not that much in that sense, unless there's some relatively early fixes. But um, you know, it's not going to get us new subs from South Korea yet, right? That's going to be another meeting that's going to be happening with NATO coming up in the next few months, and then there are going to be more commitments. So this basically gets us to 2%, so that when we show up at that NATO meeting, the question is no longer, well, why aren't you going to get to 2%? We're there, it's done, the commitment's there, the money's on the books, because at that meeting, they're going to be discussing going maybe to 3.5 to 5%. Right? And some partners are already there. Like Poland's spending more than 4% already. Poland spends more than the United States, actually, as a
Percentage-wise, yeah.
as a as a as a percentage of GDP.
What I
So
find fascinating, though, is the amount of people here complaining, saying, "This is a conservative platform." Is it really?
no,
Because
it's
they
not.
reduced our spending to 0.9%, which is the lowest it had ever been.
Yeah,
It is a fallacy that the conservative government, or any conservative government for that matter, does anything positive for the armed forces.
yeah. See, here's the thing: if our conservative party actually was ideologically conservative,
Mhm.
in a pure sense, like when you look up the definition of conservatism, not this thing that's masquerading as conservatism today that's really distorted and torqued and twisted, like this where you got to be anti everything.
Mhm.
But actual conservatism, like for example, carbon pricing, minimal government intervention. People can decide how much they want to spend. Low bureaucracy, right? Those are inherent conservative principles.
Yes.
And even though it was a conservative plan in design, because yeah, it was brought in by liberals and it's about the environment, so it got portrayed as a lefty type thing. But that was probably the most genuinely conservative way you can go about tackling. Because boosted, had they put in the carbon price at way higher than it was, we got to about 7% reductions with what we were doing. Had they started it off at $100 a ton and raised it by $100 a ton every time, rather than starting at as a little bit and then raising it a little, we definitely probably would have had much more impact, because there would have been a higher cost at the prices. Prices would have jumped much higher. Rebates would have been higher because the sticker shock would have been much greater. Yes, but we probably could have done more. We probably could not have done 100% with it, but we probably
Mhm.
could have done way more than 7, right? But then again, they had to balance sticker shock, right?
Yes.
So, and even with what they did, like this, after like 2 years or 3 years of completely, beating the drum 24/7, this is the reason why you can't pay your market like this, even though there wasn't that much sticker shock. I mean, this was designed to be like really, equivalent of frogs in boiling water, if you want to say, slow and
The whole
progressive.
point of it
This,
the
but
whole
it got
point of it was
destroyed.
to get us to change our habits.
Right.
That's the point of it. They're like, "Well, I don't wanna pay this tax." Okay, then don't do that. "But I need to do that." Okay, why do you
Well,
need
then
to
do
do
it
that?
differently.
It's for my business. Okay, well, let's look at ways you can do it differently so that it is less costly to you. Are there methods? In some cases, I'm sure there probably aren't available to an individual with the budget that they have.
Mhm. And
That's as simple as that.
that's
That's
when you're
what
supposed to have
people who
another
fall through the
program to help you
cracks.
with that,
Right,
right? That's
right.
why we had the government programs. Like, on our own, could we have afforded a heat pump? No. With a subsidy that has like an extra $5,000 off and all that kind of stuff, yeah, we could,
Well, I know
right?
a bunch of family in New Brunswick switched from oil to heat pumps.
Yep.
They now switch from oil. They haven't removed the oil-based
No, you have to
furnace.
have it as a backup.
They need it as a backup for extremely cold days, but they barely ever use it anymore.
Yep.
Barely.
I don't think we used ours. I think we used ours like 3 days all last
Yeah.
winter.
Yeah, with a heat pump, it's good to is it -20 or -28? I can't remember. You'd
I
have to
think, yeah, I think ours goes down to like -20, 25 or something.
yes. After that, you would need a secondary heat source, and they don't want you to use only a heat pump again. They want you to have a secondary backup so that,
Mhm. Yeah,
you know
and there are times like power outages and stuff like that, and then there are also
Exactly.
times when, like, for example, most of our gas costs that we had is sometimes when it's like shutting down for a couple seconds or like this, or
Mhm.
the temperature changed a lot, very sharply, and it needs to sort of gear up or whatnot like this. So in the meantime, like, the furnace will go on for a couple of minutes while it's like booting up and doing what it
Mhm.
needs to do, or defrosting, or whatever. So, but I mean, like, the delivery charge
Alone.
on
It
the
was more
gas
than your
was
usage, yeah.
way more,
I know.
way, 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 way more. I mean, there are certain
Mhm.
months where our gas bill was like 7 cents.
Well, and you know what the delivery charge is, because a lot of people fail to understand what the
Yeah,
"I didn't use any." No, it's got to do with the infrastructure that brings the product to your home,
right.
whether it's hydro, whether it's natural gas. There's a cost to maintaining that. "Well, it's in the ground, it should be good." Yeah, but stuff breaks. Stuff has to be repaired. I know. I've done dig and repairs for a telecommunications provider, a
Y
few of them
Your
actually.
water line,
All of that
right?
stuff requires maintenance. You've heard of water main breaks.
Yeah.
It happens. Is it less susceptible to, wind, rain, ice, snow, heat, et cetera, buried underground? Yes, that's why they put it underground, because it lasts lost a lot longer and requires less maintenance, but it does require maintenance, and the maintenance ain't cheap.
Mhm.
The entire damn near the entire grid of, the hydro grid in southern Quebec collapsed in 1998. Because when they built the towers, they said, "Well, what's the biggest ice storm we've ever had?" They said, arbitrary figure here, arbitrary figure, 8 millimeters. Okay, we'll build it to that standard. Nothing will ever get worse than that, right? What happened to the days when engineers would say, and I'm sure engineers fought and said, no, we need to build it to double that. And somebody penny pinching said, no, we'll build it to the max. You do realize that housing in the country of Canada and the province of Ontario specifically, engineering standards for the roof structure was meant to handle 20 feet of snow.
Mhm.
Up till I'll say 1985, but I could be wrong about that. So what happened in Quebec was they just ignored what the engineers told them to do. Engineers will tell you overbuild it. If the limit is 10, build it to 20. That didn't happen. They built it to 8. The entire thing collapsed. It cost them billions of dollars. People were without heat and power for weeks.
Mm-hmm.
I remember because I worked that entire thing.
Mm-hmm.
The whole point of it is invest properly in infrastructure. Don't cut corners.
Yep. So this is what we're doing here with this announcement, right? It's to bring us to that base level, and it allows us to. There's that part which is important, but there are more strategic elements to this announcement, right? We have this G7 meeting coming up in Kananaskis that allows us to show up at that table because the Secretary General of NATO will be there, Donald Trump will be there, a lot of our other partners will be there, and say, you know what, the 2% is done. Because whatever you were planning to put in your stuff after that, well, Canada really is like, it's done. Take that off.
It's done.
That noise
Shut up.
is there. It will not be part of the discussion. People will not be talking about it other than, what do you think about it? I think it's great, right? So it's setting that type of stage. It sets that stage also when we meet our partners at the NATO meeting to come. It just removes some noise right off the bat. It's an expensive way to do it, but it does it. It also sets the stage,
How you
for
shut up your
example.
critics.
Yes. Like this, but it's a way to do it like this. It also strategically has the point that, for example, if somebody is expecting some type of announcement at the G7 with regard to those tariffs that the United States have put on us, because, well, they no longer have they're not meeting it, so we're going to tariff. So, well, we have met. We are going to meet that, and we're going to do it this year. So, you had Ambassador Fuckface on Power Politics the other day. Yeah. Saying like this, congratulations and thank you so much. And here's one thing, by the way, people have noticed it. He said on the TV show, Prime Minister of Alberta, Daniel Smith. And it's like, and that was definitely bait because a couple of hours later on his tweet, he said Premier Smith. So he knows it's Premier, but he just wanted to stir the pot there. But for removing all that stuff with regards to alcohol and all that kind of stuff. And there are some kids that made in the chat, made some comments in the chat yesterday that the way that the system is devised in Alberta, it's not like Ontario, where, like this, there are some things that the government of Alberta can do, but it's not like they can actually force the sellers to carry it. And they certainly can't force Albertans to buy it.
It's privatized.
Right.
It's privatized. There is an Alberta Liquor Commission, sure, but the retail aspect of it is privatized.
Exactly. So, but he's sitting there like this, like, thank you so much for removing this barriers to like free and fair trade or something like that. And it's like, okay, pardon my language. Okay, now motherfucker, now remove yours.
Yeah, that's not gonna.
So, yes, but going to that meeting, because 2%, all of a sudden the ball goes back and it's like, well, we're doing it now. So, which one of those ones are going to come off? Because we know it's not about the fentanyl, given that cushy job that you just gave to Ross Ulrich. Right? The guy that was involved with Silk Roads, to whom they just gave a pardon and a cushy job. So we know it's not about the fentanyl. And now we're at 2%. So when are you going to give something that allows that conversation to happen? Because also, the president of Mexico, Claudia Sheinbaum, has announced that she will indeed attend. So that gives a opportunity for a conversation between Canada, Mexico, and the United States, not in the awful office with cameras on where potential sabotage can happen. with an irritant taken off the table. So if we don't get something after this, then that creates a permission structure for us to do something else. Strategically, pretty interesting. But it comes with a price tag. I think it's about like $9 billion extra or something like that. And what Mr. Grizzly said as well is true with regard to the Conservatives. They brought us down to less than 1%. And remember, they also did a number on our veterans while they were at it too. And they talk about CF-18s because they started the process, but it's not like we have them. Right? So, yeah, the conservative line on this one really needs to be taken with a whole salt lick. Now, is this conservative? Yes. Is it something we would get from our current Conservative Party? Fuck no.
Not even close. Again,
there's no track record.
Mark Carney is more of a progressive conservative in the vein of Joe Clark than he is a liberal like Pierre Trudeau.
Yeah.
Simple as that.
Yes. Now, we just hope that he's a progressive conservative in the vein of Joe Clark. And
well, I believe he is. I'm reading his book, Values.
Yeah.
And I would think that, yes, that's exactly who he is.
Yeah. But, like I said, Bill C2, the way it's first tabled,
well, how much
has some people concerned. Talking about G7, Modi's coming. That has people concerned.
Saudis are coming.
Mohammed. Well, so far, I don't. I think the invitation has put out. So far, there has been no confirmation yet. But yes, Mohammed Bonesaw also, it appears, has been invited. Which, again, I get it. Real ugly politic. Saudi Arabia is making some changes. It is. It is also with the way that things are reshaping in the Middle East, because it seems to be one of the poles now that are probably going to be maintaining more peace in that area rather than warring. And Saudi Arabia has an interest in doing this because they know we're about to reach peak oil and they need to do something else. So this is them doing the same thing that we're doing, essentially.
Yes. Well, if you look at NEOM, the entire construction projects that are taking place in Saudi, with the line, with the ski resort. Yes, a ski resort.
Yes.
In Saudi. They are really trying to diversify their economy. What they've done is they've looked at what they've done in the Emirates and Dubai and said, we have to do the same thing, because when oil runs out, and it will, we're screwed.
So they're doing the same thing as we are, right? They're seeing the future. They're seeing that it's changed, since they're going to have to diversify their trade partners. They're going to have to be different because they no longer have that that big, huge power coupon that is oil. Is not going to be as powerful as time goes on.
No, it won't. It won't. And we all know this, and they know it. They see the writing on the wall.
Right.
They know that their reserves and what's in the ground is being depleted rapidly, and that there is only a matter of time, which is why they're diversifying. Now, the concern, of course, being it's Saudi.
And it's Mohammed Bonesaw.
It's like, okay, you're trying to go for tourism and for expats. And I'm like, you know what? Here's the thing. You are catering to people who might enjoy a drink, might enjoy a smoke, might enjoy extramarital relations. All of those things go staunchly against your nation's, I don't want to say ideology, but certainly religious beliefs. But some of those are questionable too, because.
But when in someone else's home.
Yeah. Right. I just got to wonder how well it'll work out. Kind of like Qatar hosting the World Cup. Oh, yes, you can consume alcohol. No problem. The day it starts, no beer. What? No, you can't. You can't. We're not serving alcohol. Nobody can consume it. You can't have it. That's it. That's all. And like Anheuser-Busch has a Anheuser-Busch Labatt InBev. It's InBev is the main company.
Yeah.
You got a lawsuit on your hands, folks, because you were promised. You imported the product that you manufactured specifically for this. It cost you money, and now they're saying no. So what I'm saying is approach them with caution.
Right. Now, my thing here is when I'm looking at this, it's like, okay, I understand that we have to deal with them, but can we not send people to them
Mm-hmm.
to talk about this? Like, do we need to invite everybody at the big table? Because this, like, G7 is looking more like, gee, really?
Well, here's the thing. Until you can prove to me that you are not all of these things that we believe you are,
Over a sustained period of time,
I don't think you should be coming here.
and that would be my attitude as well. But like, I'm sitting there, I'm thinking, like, do we have to invite all the awful people at the same time? But on the other hand, um, if you have if MBS comes and Scheinbaum, who's not part of these awful people,
Mhm.
but does come, and there are other people as well, and Modi comes and all like this, there are a whole bunch of other conversations around the table now
Mhm.
about how we're going to, and Trump doesn't get to be that dominant. So this might be a way of actually drowning him in content.
Yeah. Flood the zone, right?
Right. So strategically, well, so this could be a containment thing because listen, it's a G7 plus, okay? G7 plus Modi, Scheinbaum. So that's two more. Albanese, the leader of Australia, I believe he is coming as well. I believe Mr. President Ramaphosa from South Africa is also coming. Mark Rutte, Secretary General of NATO, is coming. Um, there's a lot of people. The Brazilian president, Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva, Zelensky will be there. There's going to be more people from various nations and big organizations than there are G7 members. It's more like a G15. So it might also be a bit of a flex that
Mhm.
Mark Carney is able to summon all these people and convene them.
Well, it seems to be. Look,
He did say Canada would lead.
he is doing that. So, and look, on the surface, we're getting judgy, but there's more at play here than we're aware of. It's as simple as that. And it does show, like you're saying, well, it shows Canada has influence if they all accept. And people are looking to Mark Carney right now because I can guarantee you there are trade partners around the world who are not looking to Donald Trump. They realize, well, we still have to trade with the USA, so we have to deal with him, but he's not the guy to lead us. He's not the guy to get deals done because he will only do something if it works in his favor. And within a year or two, he'll pull back on that like he did with CUSMA or USMCA or whatever you want to call it, our current NAFTA. Best deal ever. 4 years later, worst deal ever. But you signed it. You stated it was the best. But now you're saying it's not. It's unfair because you're in a trade deficit because you buy more from us than we buy from you. If we take oil away, we're in a trade deficit. You just want our oil.
Yep.
So,
yeah, exactly. So, got a couple of clips for you. Given that I know you have to go at some point, Mr. Grizzly.
8:30.
Pardon?
8:30.
8:30, and right now we are where?
8
Okay.
o'clock.
So we can do. Okay, we'll be able to do these things. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do the Prime Minister's announcement after. I was going to do it before because there's a couple of sections on CBC that I wanted to show you first, and it's better to do that while Mr. Grizzly's here to avoid the commercial jump-ins. So, Mr. Grizzly, if you would go to the second link where it says Carignan.
Yep.
Yes. So this is our chief of defense, Jenny Carignan, interview that she gave to David Cochrane after the big announcement, explaining from her perspective how this is significant and how it will impact the Canadian Armed Forces. For those of you who will be listening, Carignan will often say CAF in her answers. That is the acronym CAF for Canadian Armed Forces.
Canadian Armed Forces, yes. If you know CAF or CAF, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I'll bring up this clip here. What is this? What is this? Getting some bizarre message here. I don't even know what that means. Here we go. Silly stuff happening with the the algo and change media. I don't want to change media. I want to show this. Stop it. Stop it, you dumb machine.
But, Vaughan, to help me understand,
Oh,
like
no, that's
the
not it.
commitment to 2% was made in
That's not it, sir.
You said
go-
1558.
The first one, Carignan, says 0, right at the beginning.
My apologies.
Yep.
It has since doubled in cash terms. 10 years ago, Canada's defense spending fell to less than 1% of GDP. It has since doubled in cash terms, but it's still not close enough to face these mounting risks. The brave women and men who are protecting our sovereignty do not have the resources they need for a riskier world. Our military infrastructure and equipment have aged, hindering our military preparedness. And so for all those reasons, I'm announcing today that Canada will achieve NATO's 2% of GDP target this year, half a decade ahead of schedule.
That was Prime Minister Mark Carney today, saying his government is ready to foot the bill to solve some of the pressing issues facing the Canadian Armed Forces and to meet the NATO GDP spending target while he's at it. The Chief of Defence Staff, Jenny Carignan, is here with reaction. She joins me now. General, it's good to see you again. Thank you for being here.
Nice to see you, David. Thanks for having me.
So Mark Carney says that by March of next year, Canada's defence spending will be at 2%. Where will the Canadian Armed Forces be by March of next year?
I think we will have had with the increased investment, we are talking about leveraging our people, really. It's enabling us to do our daily jobs in a more effective manner. So really a big portion of the investments are going towards people. It's healthcare, it's training, it's additional resources for recruitment. It's housing, it's infrastructure as well. So a lot of those basic foundational aspects that we require to enable our service members to do their jobs.
Okay, I'm not downplaying the significance and importance of any of those things when I ask you this, but those are important things to have. It gets us to the 2% target. But what does that do to boost the capabilities and readiness of the Canadian Armed Forces? Because this has been the criticism from NATO, is that we're not able to mobilize enough to deliver.
So it is absolutely about funding readiness because, for example, many of our equipment cannot be fixed because you don't have enough spare parts. So now with increased investments, you can actually have the spare parts available when it's time to fix the various platforms. So it's about giving the mechanic the wrench required and a spare part to fix whether it's a aircraft or a vehicle. So again, increasing our level of readiness. So all of this is foundational, and this is often where we've had to make very difficult decisions. But again, in order to expand the forces, in order to have recruiting and retention and enough personnel to onboard the additional capabilities also that are already programmed to happen, we need to have a strong workforce that's able to do this.
But when the Prime Minister said today only one of our 4 submarines is seaworthy, this doesn't get 4 out of 4 seaworthy, right? This is about having the maintenance capacity for already broken pieces or things that break to get them back in order. I mean, when do the big spends come on new submarines and expanding the capacity on an equipment level?
So a portion of those increased investments are also going towards specific capabilities which we were not able to have at full capacity. So additional armored vehicles, additional guns, and so on and so forth. So That allows us to actually go after those capabilities that are already existing, that we can actually have at full capacity.
Right, but this isn't the big, we've been talking about buying new submarines and looking at AUKUS and various things over the number of years. This is not what this is. That is down the road, right, for those big purchases, yes?
Of course, there's additional clauses, additional spaces in the budget in the future to be able to do that. I think what needs to be absolutely clear on those investments is that it's not just for 1 year. So it's a predictable, stable funding envelope that allows us to continually building. Not only that, but it sends signals as well to the industry to allow us again to exploit that potential that rests within our Canadian industries.
Right. Okay. So last year, I think we saw a report that the forces were about 16,000 personnel short of where they needed to be. The plan now is to recruit about 13,000. There are training challenges, though, to get people ready so they can be deployed. And we've seen some reporting from that because of the slow pace and the bottleneck, people kind of leave the forces and retention isn't working. So how do you address that? Because hiring people is one thing, but getting them ready to serve is another. And if there's bottlenecks at both of those things, you don't actually hold on to people. So how does this change things?
So this is exactly what this increased funding will help us do, is actually increase our capacity to train more people and have the resources available to do just that. Of course, over this past year, we have surpassed our recruiting targets, so for the first time in 10 years. And we've also grown the CAF by 2,000, again, that's a first for the past 10 years. So we are having success with the new initiatives we have set into place. And we've also designed the training aspect that follows that to ensure that we can train the additional personnel in an effective manner. So again, that funding is going to be absolutely key in allowing to be successful in doing that.
The money is one thing, the trainers is another, right? And a lot of the capacity would be helping with Operation Unifier in Ukraine and also in Latvia and these places. So how do you get the trainers you need to move the recruits through at the scale required?
So we have various options available to us. So we have our reserve force members that we call forward for a full-time service. So they greatly enable us to do that. There are currently 9,000 reserve force members serving in a full-time capacity. So this is a significant amount of effort from the reserve forces. And we can also look at civilian instructors that can help us in that space as well.
Okay, but are those people there at the scale you need to hit the targets that have been laid out here?
Yes, they are. So again, it's making choices and addressing priorities and then sequencing our efforts.
So one of the challenges is readiness, right? We've seen reports about almost half of the equipment is deemed unavailable and unserviceable. Going back to the submarines, only 1 in 4 of the submarines are seaworthy. By the end of this year, the fiscal year, when we get to the NATO 2% target, what do you expect the readiness percentage to be of the total Canadian Armed Forces from where it is now?
Well, our goal is always to be in the 80% plus. So we will see how this is proceeding, but we are looking at increasing that readiness aspect. So with access to spare parts, with access to everything we need to make sure that our platforms are functioning, this is great. This is going to be greatly enabling.
It seems remarkable to me, General, that in 2025 and 3 years into a ground war in Europe, where NATO has been sort of like backstopping Ukraine, that we're at a point where we're talking about budgets for spare parts and training. It seems like this should have been there a long, long time ago for a G7 NATO military force.
And again, that's why it was urgent that funding be provided, so to enable again our service members to do their job properly. So hence, really the focus on the foundational aspect, but also a more comprehensive approach, I would say, overall to defense, because the industry is also incorporated as part of that funding envelope. as well as our colleagues, CSIS, CSC, and the Coast Guard, all are security apparatus that can be leveraged to, again, counter the threats that we see in this very complex world.
Okay, that leads me to where I wanted to go next, because it's 2% spending on defense. It's not 2% of GDP spent on the Canadian Armed Forces, right? It broadens out quite a bit from there. The communication security establishment, Coast Guard, as you mentioned, and defense industrial development. There's been some question about the math, because it was like a $39 billion line item for the armed forces, $9 billion added in, but there's another $13 or $14 billion that's being pulled in from DFO, Global Affairs, the RCMP even, to get Canada to the 2%. So how should people view that? Because it is not that you suddenly have a budget of $62 billion to run the Canadian Armed Forces, right? It's not that level of readiness and capabilities. It's a bundle of things gone together that people kind of question the accounting there of whether it's really the level of military readiness Canada needs.
So the methodology that we use to account for that is the same as with all of our NATO allies. So there's a specific definition for defense into which you can account for defense spending. So we have always had various other defense organizations contributing to defense, and that portion is accounted as part of defense. And it's the same accounting for all NATO allies. But I need to be absolutely clear, what is coming to the CAF is a significant amount coming to us that is going to be enabling us in actually providing the defense that Canadians need.
Well, there is the $9 billion in round numbers of new money announced today, but the other money from the other departments that's being thrown into the calculation, a lot of that has been there for years and years and years. It's only now being added to the math. And if this is consistent with the way other NATO countries do it, I know there's a lot of room, you know, in the 2% accounting practices. Why weren't those put into the figure in years past?
They were put into the figures in the years past. So, for example, the work that we do with the Coast Guard in the maritime domain surveillance related to sovereignty operations, this was accounted for into the overall defense spending envelope, and so on and so forth for all others. So they were already part of the accounting, because again, that correlates to the NATO definition for defense spending.
So just as a final question, General, there is money here for pay raises, compensation for members of the Canadian Armed Forces. Is this an across-the-board salary increase? Is this retention bonuses? How is that going to be used? And what message do you think people thinking about joining the Armed Forces or thinking about leaving the Armed Forces take from the commitment outlined today?
So the commitment is definitely towards people. So people are very much at the center of the commitment made today, of which pay raises and additional benefits are going to be part of it. So it's a very broad envelope of, again, support for CAF members to do their jobs.
But do you think this will keep the people who are maybe frustrated after a number of tough years, keep them inside?
I can tell you that we saw today a lot of very encouraged and happy CAF members who understands the message of support and respect for the work that they are doing, and it is hugely appreciated.
Jenny Carignan, Chief of the Defence Staff, always a pleasure. Thank you for coming in on a busy day.
Thank you, David.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So, Mr. Grizzly, any thoughts?
I like her.
Right?
First off, she's very good at her job. Clearly, there's a reason she was chosen for this position. You don't become a French-Canadian female general in the military by anything other than hard work, period. And being knowledgeable and skillful and capable, number one. And I thought it was important to mention that right off the top.
Okay.
Number two, I think they're hitting on all of the cylinders that need to be hit right now. Pay rise, something that is military has been infamous in this country, and even though truthfully, speaking for, you know, as a child of a former CAF member, pay in the Canadian Armed Forces is not what you would call great.
Right.
Never has been. However, compared to our counterparts in the G7, it's always been the best,
Okay.
which is weird. But it's true. It's never been great. But they have improved over time. They have done things to improve the living standard for CAF members. Now, I have learned of CAF members who have had to go to food banks. And these tend to be rank and file individuals who are just newly in, which is terrible. That should not be happening. Should not be happening. The one thing, now I'm going to address this and somebody might get pissed off, but I don't care because it's a fact that needs to be considered. Sometimes you need to understand as a member of the Canadian Armed Forces, if you go to a bank and say, "Oh yeah, I'm CAF, I'd like to get a loan for a car." What kind of car would you like? Well, you that's too much, but you're living in barracks? Okay, so your costs are very low and your income is guaranteed. There are members who've taken on too much debt.
Yep.
Now, I will say that banks have been irresponsible by handing out large sums of money to people because all they see are dollar signs at the end of it and the interest they're going to be making. I'm not saying that is the main reason why some CAF members have had to go to food banks. I'm not saying that at all. They are not paid enough. They aren't. Especially if you are a private, or I think they're trying to change, or did they change that from private? Anyway, it's an entry-level rank, private in the military. They are not paid well. They are not. It is a substandard set of living, which is why if you're a private, you'll want to live on base, in barracks, and eat at the mess. Because you'll get 3 squares, 3 hots and a cot, basically, is what you're getting. It is not a lot of money. Yes, if you can rise up through the ranks, the jump from private to corporal is a big jump in pay. From corporal to master corporal is, at one point in time, I don't know if it is anymore, but it was one of the biggest jumps in pay in the military for NCOs, our non-commissioned members. I don't know if that's still the case today, but it was a very big jump in pay and a noticeable jump in pay. Again, they are still underpaid. So a pay rise coming for these folks, I think, is great. This is $36.14 for a private today. It's not a lot of money.
No.
It's not.
No. Especially considering what you're putting on the line.
Yes, exactly. And you got to remember, these are the folks they send directly into battle.
And this is a job, like, I know it's going to sound like a weird comparison, but when I was a dancer,
Mm-hmm.
I remember a Time Canada magazine cover showing like the best and worst paid jobs. And the worst paid job you could have as a Canadian at that time was a professional dancer.
Mm-hmm.
And considering how it is that you use your body and how easy it is to twist an ankle, pop a knee, whatnot like this, the pay definitely did not reflect, right? When you look at football players, why are they getting paid $2 million a season? Well, you could like bust your leg and there goes the rest of your career, just like that.
The average career in the NFL is 3 seasons,
right?
3 years.
So, in military is a job where people get hurt
Every day.
lot.
And they're going to ask you to walk into fire. Even we don't have CAF members in theater of battle right now that we know of. But peacekeepers get shot at all the time. So you're asked to lay your life on the line for $3,614 a month. And yes, I know, Christian, you don't want to live in the barracks, you don't want to live on base, and you don't want to eat at the mess. I fully understand that as somebody who has done those things. No, I was never in the CAF, but I've worked on bases and I've had to stay in barracks and eat at the mess. So I understand, believe me. However, like I said, if you are willing to make the sacrifices that are sometimes necessary to get a little bit ahead. I mean, I'm making a lot of sacrifices right now just to keep my head above water. So I understand. Living in barracks is never fun. It's not. And eating at the mess. Well, I will say this: the food is better today than it was when I was a young lad. But it's not great. It's not. As somebody who grew up on military bases, who ate at the mess on occasion, many occasions, it's not great. And I understand that. And they do need a pay rise. But it looks to me like this spending bill is going to get our CAF members ready for whatever may come up. And again, he said they're working, or she said they're working with the Coast Guard as well.
Yep.
Which is necessary because the Coast Guard, even though it's not military, those folks are willing to throw their lives on the line to save human beings.
Yep.
I mean,
Absolutely.
they do. So
Yeah.
it's good. I like it. Is it everything that I would like it to be? No, but it's awfully darn close.
Yep. Yep.
It's the best I've seen in a very, very long time.
Yep. And just to put the point on, it's like, yes, in terms of like what you're putting on at risk, right? When I'm telling like your body in terms like, you can be shot at, whatnot. But I just mean your body, right? You're running, run. You're doing a drill like this, boom, you can hurt yourself. Right? There's so many injuries when your job is physical. Anybody who works very physical, construction site, that type of stuff, just all the many ways that you can get hurt and it affects your income, right? So they're also putting that on the line.
Yes.
Right.
Well, let's address this comment. Seems low for the sacrifices I might have to make, but not that low for entry-level unskilled job. Okay, I take umbrage with unskilled job,
Yes.
PNC Bio. I take umbrage with that because you go through training. There's no such thing as unskilled labor to begin with,
Right.
because most people aren't willing to do those tough, laborious jobs. There is a skill to it. A private in the military who is asked to go out into the field and get shot at has been trained to do so. It is not unskilled. It is not unskilled. No, they don't have an engineering degree, but it is not unskilled labor. And I do not like that statement, unskilled labor. When people say it, it others people and it's punching down. I don't care for it. You can say it as much as you want, but I'm telling you how I feel about it.
All right.
Next clip.
Yes, let's go to the next clip, Mr. Grizzly.
Okay.
And this is a lot of things you will hear similar to what I've said before with regard to the strategy and whatnot, but much more detail here and stuff like that in these answers.
But Vanda, to help me understand, like the commitment to 2% was made in 2014. It was going to be met by 2030, and now March. Like, what's going on?
I was talking to colleagues about this, like former colleagues and current colleagues, and just thinking that something's definitely shifting. And I think that's made this necessary move happen. And I think, defense spending can help move a lot of things around. It's good for our personal industries, it's good for our suppliers, but to signal to the world where we're at. So what I'm thinking is the Prime Minister has had a lot of conversations, like every time, I think almost every day, I get a readout from another ally or another head of state or somebody that he talks to. We also know he's been talking to the President on a regular basis. So all of this is telling me that is a signal to him that this needs to move faster. I know this was a conversation we had even during leadership. Christopher Freeland had a certain time, Mark Carney had another time. This tells me that through his conversations, he feels like, nope, you know what, we can't wait. This has to be now. So it tells me that there's an urgency to this that I think that we have to be aware of.
Brad, it is a remarkable shift in priority. Suddenly there are billions to be found for the Canadian Armed Forces. Now still billions shy of where it needs to be on an equipment and procurement and capability thing. But what do you make of just the shift and the urgency that was laid out today by the Prime Minister on this?
Well, David, company's coming. We gotta put on our best here. We've got we got the relatives coming over. We've got extended friends and family coming over. The G7 is merely days away here. This has been, to varying degrees, this has been, rather embarrassing. And it never made any sense when Trudeau said, we're going to get to 2% in multiple years from now. Those that want to get you there now are unhappy, and all these elected officials within the NATO go, you know what, there could be 3 or 4 changes of government. You folks can't build ships, you can't buy subs, you can't do much. Will you get to this target in multiple years from now? So I think that this sets up Carney. I think there's a number of things that are happening. Today's defense announcement is one of them, the acceleration at 2%. And I think for a lot of Canadians, I certainly, when the government says we can't get there any faster, you think, well, is this ideological or is there something there? When Trump made all that that noise about our borders and the fentanyl and how little fentanyl was. It was never about fentanyl, and all of a sudden, within like a day and a half, it's like, okay, we've got billions of dollars for the border security to take that last little bit of fentanyl out of the southern, being taken into the United States from the north. So, there's a lot of surprises here. I think it maybe eats away at credibility of when politicians say something can't be done, and then all of a sudden, with a change of priorities. But this is all in light of the G7. There's a number of things I think that Carney wants to do at that G7. This takes that 2% off the menu, so that he can focus on other things.
Yeah, Rob, I think Brad is onto something there, right? Because you don't want to host Trump, Zelensky, and a bunch of NATO allies and not have the commitment made that they've all been looking for.
Yeah, but while we snap our suspenders because we're getting the 2% in a hurry, our rich cousins and uncles are coming over. They're spending 3.5% to 5% immediately because of the threat in their own backyard. So this isn't just about the G7, it's also about the NATO summit that comes a couple of weeks
and the EU and all of it.
That's right. And so what does it do? I think Vandana used a very good word. It sends signals. Signal to Trump. Yes, you're a malign presence, but you're not wrong about NATO defense spending outside of the United States. You're right. We have ignored our own defense. The Europeans have taken for granted that the United States would be there to protect them. A signal to Trump in another way as well. We are in profound negotiations with them at a late stage on a very broad agreement that goes beyond a trade agreement. We have money to spend, we're saying to President Trump. We are going to spend some of it in the United States, or maybe we don't if you don't give us the deal you want. So it's not a bad signal to spend to him. The interesting signal that I thought for the first time I heard the Prime Minister use the word sacrifice. I heard the Prime Minister explain why a sacrifice would be necessary. And he said, in essence, geography does not provide us the protection that it has. I mean, it's a myth. I think a lot of people refer to our Arctic as the empty attic of North America. That's a myth. But that attic now is very vulnerable. And I think the Prime Minister's probably gotten intelligence briefings that have told him how vulnerable that is. So it's also, I think, a signal to Canadians that we have to get serious about our own defense, independent of President Trump.
So on sacrifice, Rob, because I've heard you've mentioned this a couple of times on the show, and the Prime Minister said it today, and he was asked about it. I think Jeff Gray asked him about it today.
Right.
The specifics were not there in terms of what it meant. He did rule out the idea of raising taxes because he wants, but they are going through a cost reduction process in government right now, eyeing savings, cuts and layoffs and job reductions is what it sounds like by the fall. I mean, is this what we're talking about, like shifting away from core government to things like the military?
He didn't mumble what would be required, but he came close to mumbling. He didn't exactly highlight it. What he said was, yes, we do need to look for savings. We need to grow the economy. He tried to say that's what the one Canadian economy thing is all about. But
also the defense spending. They're linking that to industrial policy.
That's right. And he needed to, he mentioned savings. Okay, savings is a code word for we gotta slash some spending elsewhere. He drew a line, but he also said, when asked about social programs, something that I don't think would have ever come out of the mouth of Justin Trudeau: we cannot redistribute what we don't have.
Yeah, so he's been saying that for a while, like in his Canada 2020 speeches, but he's not wrong.
No, in other words, we got to be able to pay for this stuff, and that means we're going to have to cut elsewhere.
So, Lisa, what signals do you take from that as a former cabinet minister who now works for a big bank? You know, that when he's talking about cost savings, and sort of shifting priorities, I mean, what do you take on that front, on the defense side, and where Mark Carney's going to go in the next little while?
Well, it's like I said at the top, David. I mean, there's only three ways that you can get money in the government to reprioritize. You can either cut something within the government operations, you can raise taxes, or you can borrow. That's it. Those are your three levers. So clearly he's saying he's probably going to do a little bit of, maybe not the raising taxes because he's just cut taxes, but certainly of the other two. That's what he's going to have to turn to. But can I just point out how ironic all of this is, considering it was only 2014 when Justin Trudeau accused the Conservatives of wanting to whip out their CF-18s. And here we are with the Prime Minister, who is definitely looking at this more in terms of might is the right way to go in terms of our defense. What a shame that we lost 10 years.
Well, you know,
All right.
on that,
Again,
I'm going to reserve my thoughts on Lisa Raitt.
yeah, Miss Raitt.
Never miss an opportunity to take a.
Still can't quit Trudeau, number one. Number two, it was under you guys
Yeah.
that we went below 1%. The CF-18s that you ordered, all that kind of stuff, are not here yet.
Yeah, they ordered Super Hornets from Australia, didn't they?
Yeah. Oh,
I can't remember.
Yeah, no, so yeah. And the whole
Oh, the
F-35
F-35s?
thing was a
Yeah.
big boondoggle and a screw up. I mean, come on, man. Come on, man. Like, please
Clearly,
do not.
Trudeau lives rent-free in their head because they keep talking about a man who is no longer in power. He's a private citizen.
But just because they keep on wrapping themselves in the flags, gee, imagine we were right. Who would have known? Imagine if we hadn't lost the tech. You guys didn't get it done.
Yeah.
We saw what the state of the military and what you did to our veterans were when you guys left office. You can't sit there and go, see, we were right all along if we had just done it, but you didn't. You didn't, Blanche. You didn't do it. I don't. And if you watched Power and Politics yesterday, you will have seen James Bazan specifically. So, man, I cannot stand this man, James Bazan.
Mhm.
Defense has been his file for the longest time. All right. He was served as the chair of the Standing Committee on National Defense starting in 2011 under Harper's government. Then in 2013, he was appointed by the Prime Minister as the Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of National Defense. And then the entire time he's been in opposition, he's been the, quote, shadow minister. That's not a real thing. The critic for national defense. He has been on the defense file for 14 freaking years. And he actually gave a part of that interview where every time he was talking about the Liberals, he had this smug little thing on his face like this and talking about the lost decade. The lost decade during which we actually doubled military spending from where you guys left it.
Mm-hmm.
To get to the 1.37, and the budget that was, and the plans for this coming budget was to get to 1.71. All of that would have been under Trudeau. But that was the lost decade, wasn't yours. Like the sheer unmitigated gall of this party, particularly on this file, particularly given what they did to the veterans.
Indeed. I have to go. I have the longing puppy beside me, starting to give me the grunts, groans, and moans. So thanks, everybody, for coming out today. Appreciate each and every one of you. And hopefully I'll be able to get some things accomplished today.
Yes. And thank you, sir, because I knew that you grew up on base. So I definitely just wanted to hand that previous one to you because I knew that you would have a lot of value added to offer there.
Well, thank you. And somebody made a mention in there that we should get Army Chris come in to talk about some of this too. I did post in the chat, and I'll do it again. It is, what's the title of this? Regular force pay by rank. I'm going to post it again in the chat. Anybody who wants to read about it, if you're considering a career in the military, it NCOs, officers. So it goes private corporal, master corporal, sergeant, warrant officer, master warrant officer, chief warrant officer. And then officers, what I think, if memory serves, captain's pay, a captain's basic monthly pay is not much more than a sergeant. Okay. I'm not saying it's garbage. It's still, still pretty good money. But you look at the specialist pay under that. If you get into warrant officer or petty officer, first class, search and rescue, the highest pay they can make is $15,000 a month. Which is not bad. That's pretty good money. And as somebody who was asked to dive into danger to save a human being, I think that's, reasonable compensation. Is it enough? I don't know. I'm not one to say. Anyway, got to go. I will see you all later. Take care.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
All right, kids and gubs. So as I mentioned, of course, right, you see in the sort of like more strategy session here, talks about linkages to other types of meetings and where this is positioning on the chessboard. Kit Saucy mentioned in the chat, and this is probably where we'll be going next a little bit. This also ties in with all the other stuff that we're doing, right, to consciously decouple from the United States. With the Rearm Europe and all that type of stuff, we're trying to find a way to not spend 75% or 75 cents out of every dollar that we spend on anything having to do with defense in the United States, right? We want to spend more of it at home and just maybe diversify our partners, right? Because what the United States is doing to us, they're doing to other nations as well. So, spending more money at home, but spending more money, let's say, in Europe or in South Korea, and them spending more money here, either buying, like I said, like our you know our steel, our aluminum, or having certain things built over here within these agreements that we have. All of this stuff will help. When you add the agreement with the European Space Agency, right? There's a lot of stuff with regard to that could also have applications, let's say, later on, right? Satellite technology, for example, if we have partnerships with the European Space Agency, to get satellites up via Europe versus the United States versus, a private company or that type of thing. Well, those satellites could serve purposes that help with military function, right? So things that are, as the Premier of Quebec and Monsieur Blanchette had informed us, we talk a lot about the auto industry, but the whole aerospace industry, which is very big, particularly in Quebec, is also very integrated with the United States in the same way as the car industry is, right? Blanchette specifically said when you're talking about autos, you should be talking about space and aerospace in the same way, in the same breath. There'll be opportunities there too. If there is additional employment here in building that type of stuff, that helps if we're using more of our, again, steel and aluminum in building stuff here. That helps us with other markets. There's a lot of this that dovetails into the whole industrial part, creating economic activity, generating additional productivity and growth within Canada. That's attached with this deal. So again, all of these things are the pieces of the overall plan of what we need to do to diversify and to decouple and to expand our markets. All of these are placed in this already as well. So you have all these you have all those connections as well. So this is indeed very, very strategic. In some of this conversation that we're having about all of this, right? Yes, there is going to be some sacrifice. The one thing about Lisa Rate's comment that was true before she got into the partisan BS is that there are, in fact, right, the three ways to raise money. You either tax, you either cut, like this, or you either borrow. So with David Cochran's question, though, you'll realize that 2% of GDP spent on defense does not necessarily have to be 2% of GDP going to the Department of National Defense, right? There are other things that can go in there. So I think like there are 13 or 14 different departments that can contribute stuff, right? I believe that Kit Linda asked in the chat, was the Coast Guard not included? The Coast Guard was not part of the military like it is in the United States. It was considered civilian. I think that is going to change now. But anything that the Coast Guard was doing, for example, as the Chief of Defense Staff mentioned, I believe in the interview, that had to do with protecting international waters, all that kind of stuff, that part of the budget did get counted before in that. But now perhaps maybe the entirety of the Coast Guard itself would be included in that. So there is some ways to add to the number in that way, but a lot of this, as I mentioned, is very much people focused, right? Paying people well, making sure they're equipped well, everything in our budget, I think the Chief of Defense Staff mentioned that as well, that goes towards veterans is also included in that. And of course, there was a kid here, I can't remember who exactly it was off the top of my head who made the comment in the chat that by making sure that veterans are also well taken care of and showing that it is the case, that will also help with recruitment and retention, because people will know that at the end of their careers that the services will be there. And that's also very important. So lots of things here in this that's very interesting and definitely worthy. So we've talked about all the stuff around it. I want to bring us now to the actual announcement by the Prime Minister itself. It was interesting in that the actual announcement for something that is so big was only about 5 minutes in length, really. The Prime Minister's brevity with words in some ways. It's kind of interesting because he gives, it's really interesting, right? Because he gives long answers and sometimes people are saying time, but he's also incredibly economical with words. So, he packs a lot into an answer. But you would think that an announcement this big, like we would be talking like for 15 or 20 minutes and wrapping stuff in a whole bunch of like flowery language. And it's like just like about 5 minutes in text, 10 seconds, boom, to the point, get the stuff out there. I'll take your questions. Which was it struck me because I would have expected that there would have been much more. But like I said, in those 5 minutes, he does pack a lot. And then, of course, you get to the various questions in which, you can elaborate. So, yeah, how about we just go right to it? There are 2 sections in the couple of minutes that are in French. I've had the opportunity to pre-translate them, so I will be able to just stop the video at that time, state what it is that he did say, and then just keep on with that. So, kids and cubs, here we are. Prime Minister Mark Carney making the announcement.
Good afternoon, everyone. Bonjour. It's great to be here at Fort York. Built back in 1935, this armory was constructed for a new unit, one that was created as part of a major modernization of the militia. And today, once again, we're here because we are beginning the work of modernizing and strengthening not just a militia, but Canada's entire military. Early this morning, with the Chief of the Defence Staff, with the Minister of National Defence, we outlined a plan that will redefine Canada's place in a more dangerous and divided world. At the centre of that plan are the men and women of the Canadian Armed Forces, the individuals who make immense sacrifices every single day in the service and protection of Canada and our allies.
All right. So the Prime Minister then moves on to French in this particular section, where he says the international system on which we've long relied is increasingly unstable. As new powers are involved in a struggle that will shape the world, Canada must be ready to protect Canadians, our values, our prosperity, and our sovereignty. And then he continues on. So just let me set that up to where it is from where he continues on. And here we go.
Is tabling what's called supplementary estimates. They include our plan to rebuild, rearm, and reinvest in the Canadian Armed Forces. The additional $9.3 billion for this fiscal year, 2025-2026, will bring Canada in line with the 2% NATO target this year, half a decade ahead of the previous government's plan. Right now, Canadian Armed Forces members are fighting forest fires to protect their fellow Canadians and communities. In fact, members from here are in Sandy Lake as we speak. They're defending our coasts and waters. They are patrolling the Arctic and supporting our allies on Russia's frontiers. Again, members from here, including the signalers stationed in Latvia. They do so in tough conditions, and too often, has to be said, they do so with inadequate equipment. They deserve better, and they will have better. Members of our armed forces will get a well-deserved salary increase, which will contribute to better recruitment and retention of personnel. We will modernize, streamline, and enhance the benefit system so that veterans and their families can get the support they need sooner and more easily. And we will invest in research to support women's veterans' health. We will importantly invest in military equipment, infrastructure, and technology by procuring new aircraft, armed vehicles, drones, and ammunition, as well as new sensors to monitor the seafloor and the Arctic. We will repair and maintain existing ships, aircraft, infrastructure, and other assets that for far too long have been allowed to degrade. We'll expand the reach and capabilities of the Canadian Coast Guard and integrate them into our NATO defense capabilities. And we will invest in modern and secure technological infrastructure, including artificial intelligence, cybersecurity, quantum technologies, and our capacity in space. Our plan will include the support of key capabilities, including the Arctic over-the-horizon radar, the Joint Counter-Drone Program, joint support ships, long-range precision strike capability, increased domestic ammunition production, additional logistics utility vehicles, light utility vehicles, and armored vehicles.
All right. So again, a long list of things that this money is going to be going to. So again, it is going to affect readiness, and it's going to affect our ability to be able to deploy and to be able to meet current commitments and that type of stuff. It's very important. But you will also notice that a lot of this is framed as in doing right by the people who serve and protect us, and not as a big strut on the world stage, or as Lisa Raitt would call it, whipping out the CF-18s. Right? The framing of this is very, very, very deliberately centered around the people that we ask to take this risk. Also, for those who are history buffs, this announcement is being made from Fort York. And for those who are a bit familiar with the Battle of 1812, Fort York is located in what is now Toronto, and it was a key site of the conflict. The Battle of York, which was fought on April 27, 1813, saw American forces successfully capture the fort, which served as the capital of Upper Canada and marked their first significant land victory in the conflict. The Americans occupied York for several days, destroying buildings and taking supplies. But following the war, the British rebuilt Fort York, constructing new buildings and fortifications. The fort and the surrounding area are now preserved as a National Historic Site, offering visitors an opportunity to explore the history and battle and the War of 1812. So he's also making this from a historically significant site. I'm sure there's some messages in there too. Symbolism, as Pierre would like to call it. By the way, with regard to that, Kit, PNC, and Bio, I think, referred us in the chat to something by Mr. Kaufman the other day, and I did go to look at it. And in all that thing with the symbolism, when we were watching that video of Pierre talking with the empty cup, and everybody noticed the hard hat, I did not notice, but he did, that right next to the hard hat was a Canadian flag in which the maple leaf and the two red stripes on the side were blue. A Canadian flag, again, in which the maple leaf and the two red stripes were blue. Tells you everything you need to know, I think. Hopefully, I'll be able to put an image of it before the show is over to point it out. But yeah, that just sort of popped in my mind while we're talking about this. So yeah, the conservative thing about wrapping themselves in the maple leaf and saying, yeah, military, yes, understand the link, military conservative, but not these conservatives. Clearly, not these conservatives who are anything but. Let's be honest, right? They took the name, but there's absolutely nothing conservative about the Conservative Party of Canada. Like genuinely conservative, there isn't. Okay. Prime Minister continues in French from this point on and says, it is time for Canada to chart its own path, to assert itself on the international stage. It is time to defend our values with those who share them. It's time to share with the world a distinct vision and approach. Okay, that again fits in with his theme that Canada will lead. All right, let's see. He just basically ends this before we go to the question period, question and answer period. So I will show the last little bit here, and it's relatively brief, and then we'll go into the Q&A.
As the world grows more dangerous, we will secure Canada. And through these efforts, we will also create tens of thousands of high-paying jobs right here at home. Canada will lead, with the strongest economy in the G7 and a strong, secure and sovereign future for all Canadians and for all time. Thank you very much. Merci, and I'll now be pleased to take your questions.
All right. So we're going to the question and answer section. Let's put it this way. There are a few questions that I found particularly interesting, but some of them were clearly needed in the sense that given that he was so economical with words in the announcement, a lot of these things might have been things that would have been in the broader text of an announcement with another prime minister. So these are questions that will probably give some answers that will give some basic information that is useful. But like I said, normally this type of information probably would have also been included in the announcement. But different prime ministers, different styles, and such things. So it's not a criticism; it's just just an observation here. So again, we've been talking about accounting here. So this this question and follow up here will be about asking about creative accounting and impacts of this with regard to procurement, because procurement for a while has been an issue.
Nous allons maintenant passer à cette conférence de presse. We'll now begin the press conference. Nous commencerons avec une question et une relance. We'll begin with one question and one follow-up. Première question, first question.
Good afternoon, Prime Minister Carney. John Benavalli Rao with CTV National News. You're moving up the NATO spending target in a way that you didn't talk about during the election campaign. How much of this is going to be creative accounting, shall we say, to get to the target you need ahead of this NATO meeting at the end of the month?
Thank you for the question. None of it is going to be creative accounting. Look, I think what you're seeing here is a reflection of several factors. One, the good work that's been done by Department of National Defence, the Canadian Armed Forces in advance during this period. Let's face it, where there were election campaigns and the focus was only on the immediate as opposed to moving forward. That's the first thing. The second is a full recognition by Canada's new government of the fundamental importance of providing the basics, the foundations, proper pay, proper benefits, proper housing, munitions, equipment, the basics are there. But then moving off from that to begin to build these critical capabilities. And I would say one other thing, and I'll hand back for your follow-up, which is that we're also recognizing that even during the elections campaign from the start of the year, the world shifting, the nature of our alliances changing, the expectations within those alliances, but also our expectation for what we need to do to protect Canada have shifted. And when it's something as fundamental as defense of Canadian interests, you need to act. And that's why we're pulling things forward.
There's still a massive procurement problem for the Canadian military. How do you intend to fix that with this announcement?
Yeah, so part of this announcement, and it's an incredibly important question, if I can just expand on it for a moment, which is there's several aspects of procurement issues. The first is the speed with which, there's announcements, there's money allocated, but that money doesn't get spent, it lapses in the parlance, and that means that the women and men of the armed forces don't have the equipment they need. We can't deploy as we need to. Secondly, there's an issue about predictability of the spend. It's very hard for our armed forces, the Department of National Defense and their support, to plan 3, 5, 10 years out. They need to be able to do that. So we need to be more consistent. And the third element of procurement is around how do we procure in a smart way. And that starts with value for money. Every taxpayer dollar is precious. But it's also being smart about having the maximum economic impact here in Canada. And so what you're seeing with the announcement today is greater predictability, commitment to the scale of investment, predictability about the types of capacities we're going to be building. And then thirdly and importantly, a structural change, which we've mentioned before, but we're emphasizing, is that we will create a new defense procurement agency. We're in the process of doing that. And that agency will have various abilities for various reasons. We can discuss it at another juncture in more detail, where they can move more quickly in making procurement decisions. They will have that focus on building Canadian capacity at the same time. And so they'll help solve these very real issues that you're raising.
Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Next question.
Hi, Mr. Carney. Jacob Lawrence with Bloomberg News. I just wanted to ask again on how this will be paid for. Are you looking at taxes or program cuts, additional debt?
So we, one of the things we've said from the start in recent months is there's a few big decisions in the very near term for the government. Some of them don't cost or cost very little, which, for example, the one Canadian economy bill, which is now before the House, will have a huge impact in terms of growth in this economy and bringing the country together. Others have a more significant impact, and you just mentioned two. Today's announcement and this focus on meeting our own responsibilities to protect Canadians, but also our NATO obligations at the same time. This decision that we're announcing today and the associated summit at NATO towards the end of this month, those are significant events from a budget perspective, and we wanted to get to a point where we had addressed those. And then secondly, as you just referenced, we have just begun the process to look for savings in government, to improve government productivity, to reallocate spending across government. We're just, last point, and so getting greater traction on that and clarity on the scale of that will be important for the budget. Last 2 points. Budget will be delivered in the early fall. The Minister of Finance will be more precise in due course. But we just cut taxes. We're not raising taxes. We just cut taxes. 22 million Canadians are getting a tax cut July 1st. Very pleased to see all-party support of that in the House. A good sign of parliamentarians coming together to help Canadians during the affordability crisis. Thank you.
And just on fiscal matters, are you still expecting the deficit for this year to be at 62 billion?
Well, look, the deficit, we'll give an update of the outlook for the deficit in due course. That will take into account the economic conditions, decisions such as today, progress we're making on spending reductions as well. So today's not the day for a fiscal update. Thank you.
All right. So went through two series of questions here with regard to the creative accounting. I'm noticing some discussions here in the chat, like the gall of asking a banker whether or not there'll be creative accounting. And as we mentioned previously in the show, and as you heard with the Chief of Defense Staff in her interview that there are guidelines set out by NATO that all NATO member countries to which they have to adhere, and everybody counts for that in a similar manner. So no creative accounting there, and a bit of an slightly insulting question in some way, or at least brash, if one would want to put it that way, with regards to that. Of course, acknowledging that procurement has been an issue, there is going to be an office that is set up specifically to deal with procurement to try to make that happen a little more smoothly. Of course, the question, how do we pay for it? Again, taxes, cuts, or debt, making it very clear that raising taxes is not going to be one of the ways we do that, because he's just cut taxes. So it's going to have to be either through some borrowing. Yes, it's probably some of it's probably going to go on to the deficit. But of course, again, there is a sort of program review, which is a typical thing that happens every time, and they try to find some savings. So it seems that most of the savings that would be able to be found, if there are any, and there should be some, would probably be directed towards the money would be taken from that and going towards this particular initiative, which would make it such that whatever does need to be borrowed will be a little less than the total amount of this package. But yes, some of it is probably going to have to go on to debt based on these answers here. Notice also at the end of this particular answer, I hope I got the end of the answer correctly, how the Prime Minister actually shares some credit at the end, right, when he talks about certain things having passed, showing that it was the entirety of Parliament that was interested in working on something, not like the NDP did in the past Parliament, where anything that was done, so we did it, we forced it, it was us. Nobody else had anything to do with it, and to give no credit to Liberals or whatnot for their share on it. It was all us. This one, he could have, said, you know what, we said we would pass it quickly. Boom, it passed quickly. I did that. Thank me, because he actually spread the credit to the entire Parliament for having done that. Difference in change of tone. Also, kind of makes it harder. When the Prime Minister gives credit to the entire Parliament for having passed something, rather than to just his own party, and you have the Conservatives doing what Lisa Raitt did at the end of that, or doing what James Bazan did in his interview, like this, talking about stuff, a file that he's been on for 14 years and should know better, and turning around and even suggesting that there was a decade of darkness when it comes to military funding based from the Liberals compared to their own performance, when he's keenly aware of his own party's performance because he's been on the file since 2011. It makes that kind of juvenile commentary appear even more crass, because the Prime Minister has no problem sharing credit, but they simply cannot acknowledge a basic reality that military spending did go up in the decade of Trudeau. They will not admit it. So one person gives credit, the other people try to not even give credit for something that's so obvious. You just need to look at numbers side by side. Oh well, that's the game that they want to play. So much for that learning and growing. Now we get some questions with regard to, of course, typical ones that we will get as to how this plays with regard to the situation going on with the United States. So let's take a look at this.
Thanks very much.
Next question.
Hi, this is Vipal Manga from the Wall Street Journal. How does this initiative play into Canada's hopes for a new economic and defense framework with the United States?
Well, I think what it starts with is our responsibilities to Canadians, and within the context of, well, first and foremost, it's about protecting Canadians, us taking our responsibilities in the context of a United States that is providing a lower degree of collective security. Understandable, very clear, understandable. So we're stepping up. It's also understandable, quite frankly, because the threat landscape, unfortunately for this country, has increased with both the policies of some countries, with non-state and terrorist actors, but also technology and the ability to. Our advantages of geography have been reduced, I can put it that way. So first and foremost, we're doing this for us. Relatedly, we're doing it as a strong NATO partner. We're a firm believer in NATO, and we're standing shoulder to shoulder with our NATO allies. We'll continue to do so. And of course, the United States is a fundamental ally of the country. So I think it's very complementary to the process of developing that new economic and security partnership with the Americans.
Presumably, some amount of these monies will go towards U.S. Companies and defense contractors. Does that help in your negotiations with the U.S. at all?
Well, we are certainly in the top 20 clients, if I can put it that way, of the United States defense industry. And we are significantly increasing our defense spend. So it's material. We are material. And of course, there are many complementarities between our expertise, including the women and men of the Canadian Armed Forces, but also technical expertise. A complementarity which will only increase with what we're announcing today. I'll give you an example. Canada is absolutely one of the world's leaders in cyber and AI. There is a big focus in this defense package on developing our cyber and AI capacities, working in partnership. We're here in Toronto. We're a few blocks away from the Vector Institute, for example, and creative destruction labs. So building on those partnerships can be complementary to our relationship with the U.S. Thanks.
Thank you.
All right. I'm going to fast forward a little bit in time here, just not to skip over what's going on next, but because there's another question with regard to what's happening with the United States that comes in, so to keep all that element in one block. But you will notice here that while this may or may not have any benefit for us with regard to the United States, we hope that it does, but the core of that answer is it's not about them. It's about us. Which is kind of a little strut there, in a way.
I'll go back to the speech then. Another remark you made talking about Canada's need to focus on Canada, to work with Europe, to maybe disentangle ourselves a little bit from the United States. Isn't it also, it's inevitable that our defense structure is going to be completely integrated with the United States? There's no way to get around that.
Well, I would, you had me until you said completely. No, it's not inevitable. I would change from that line. We are very close and complementary defense partners with the United States. That will continue in many respects. I'll give you the example of ballistic missile defense in its broadest sense. NORAD as a component of the broader. It makes, there are many, many reasons for very close, if not enhanced, cooperation between Canada and the United States. And we are working intensively on the best way to do that. But there are other areas, and it can be in with respect to certain elements of material, technologies across any element of the forces, including AI, cyber elements, where we are going to look to diversify. We're going to do more ourselves. We're going to look to diversify our partners. As you saw, I mentioned in the speech, it isn't news, but we are in close discussions with our European partners to join ReArm Europe. That will be an element of diversification. That's just smart. It's better to be diversified. It's better to have options. It's better to have different supply chains and broader partners. And of course, what we're talking about, last point, is diversifying with our closest allies, right? These are our closest allies in Europe that we diversify with, and it will be to the benefit of the Canadian people. Thank you.
So you will notice, Kits and Cubs, some very, very, very light shade there. We're diversifying with our reliable partners. Not saying that the United States is not a reliable partner, but if we are spending 75 cents out of every dollar in the United States, and we are looking to reduce that, let's say to 55 cents or something. I don't know if there's a target number, but we're looking to reduce that. That's some shade. It's once again saying the United States is not a particularly reliable partner without saying outright, boldly, right? The United States is no longer a reliable partner. All right. There was, again, talk about sacrifice in there, and he is asked about this pretty much point blank here. So I'm going to go back to the part that I skipped before, because I said I wasn't skipping it to get over it. And let's hear what he has to say about specifically sacrifice.
Next question.
Hi, Prime Minister. Jeff Gray, Globe and Mail. I wanted to ask you about remarks you made this morning. You mentioned the word sacrifice. There's a debate going in Europe about this rearming that's underway, and there's a lot of talk about the effect that's going to have on social assistance and healthcare and so on. You did use that word today. Are Canadians going to have to sacrifice something, future healthcare increases or something to pay for in the long term, not just 2%, 3%, 5% more spending on the military?
Well, I think the first thing is that it underscores, and I also made this, thanks for paying attention to the remarks this morning, but also made this point right at the outset, is there's no true security without economic strength. And this is true for defense and security. It's true for our social programs as well. We can't redistribute what we don't have. And so the importance, and that's why this government is so laser focused on building the strongest economy in the G7. So we can not just maintain, but enhance, if possible, our social model, our social framework, support each other. Some of these sacrifices will come, I think, in terms of, I'm going to give you an odd answer to this, but I believe this, which is it's going to require a degree of cooperation, consensus, a degree of speed that's going to be needed, both for the investments, nation-building investments that we're looking to move forward, as well as to build these defense capacity. And if I can just loop back to the earlier question about defense procurement, it's part of the reason why we are changing our procurement model.
I'll go back to the speech then. Another remark you made talking about Canada's need to focus.
All right. So a little bit there. Mark Carney was on the record because I saw a question in the chat, not particularly in this conference here, but in other instances, as mentioning that he does not want to do things like touch supports, like childcare, like dental care, and pharmacare. I don't know if the changing situation has made it such that those programs would be affected by this, because when he did say that, there wasn't talk about there may have been chatter and whatnot like this, but there was no talk about reaching that target this year. I think I think the original goal was 2027 or something. It was going to be a couple more years. So there may be. I'm not sure if there would be cuts, but if there was any plans for further expansion of those over the next few years, those might be put on hold. But that is not yet clear. And it's not made clear here what it is specifically that will, where it is those sacrifices really will come from. Kit, Mr. Jim also made a good comment here, is that if we are, in terms of how you're funding stuff, there is a fourth method, and it is indeed correct, which is expanding the economy. It does fit into generating more tax revenue, but without necessarily raising the tax rate, right? If you have more economic activity, you bring in more tax revenue. And if his plan is to grow the economy, and if he is successful, there will be a portion of the money that comes to fund this that could come from that and just be earmarked and directed to that as well. So that could be a fourth way. It does fall into taxation, but not specifically raising taxes, but more in the sense of generating more tax revenue by growing the economy. And a lot of his plans are definitely focused with regard to that. So if that does pan out, it does make the sacrifices in terms of cuts less severe. However, it does that money that would come in, if anybody thought, hey, if we're growing the economy, we might be able to do UBI or what, that type of stuff, that money would already be spoken for. Right. So it does, at worst, there could be some cuts. At best, would be probably slower or cessation of expansion of such programs. That it could manifest in that way. But there's definitely not enough details one way or the other to know how that's going to go. So, if you have some people on one side, the conservative side, going, "Oh my God, we're going to have to borrow up the yin yang to do it." Yeah, well, yeah, but we gotta. What are you going to do? You gotta, right? So it's going to be some empty rhetoric, and on the other side, you could have, "Oh my God, everything's going to go to hell in a handbasket. Say goodbye to your childcare." That's probably not accurate as well, right? There'll be something, no doubt, and it will impact in some way, but it doesn't seem like to be a wholesale wanting to ditch certain things that we have acquired or accomplished in order to do this. But it could, everything's a trade-off, right? When you spend money on one thing, it's not available to spend on something else. So that's where a majority of the impact could be, along with some borrowing. All right. What else do we have here? Now, interesting. This question here is based on something that Mark Carney had said specifically before. I think we even had presented it as a clip where Prime Minister Carney mentioned that when it comes to this thing, it's not about achieving some arbitrary target, right? He says that whatever we're going to, I remember this distinctly when he said, he gave his response that whatever we are going to spend, we are going to spend for our benefit and to serve us and to meet our needs. It's not just taking a bunch of money and saying, okay, we've thrown this bunch of money at it. Now we've met our 2%, let us off the hook. It's, yes, we want to spend this money and we're going to spend this money, but we're going to need a little time to figure out where specifically we want to spend it. And we're not going to spend any less or any more than we need to get to that part. So he's looked around, he's had his consultations. He says, here's some way that we can get a lot of money out the door relatively quickly. And get some, he likes to do this, right? Minimal spending, maximum impact. So what's the maximum impact I can get for this type of spending immediately right now? So we're talking about boosting salaries, which increases retention, right? So these are things, giving people the tools and the training and the parts and the stuff in order to be able to service the equipment that we have, so that we're at 80% deployability rather than 50%. These are all things that can be done relatively quickly, that don't require 7-year procurement processes, right? This can happen relatively fast, so you can get maximum bang from that buck right away, while you are writing the contracts and starting the process for the procurement of larger pieces, right? So again, it's that, what can we do in the short term? What can we do in the medium term? What can we do in the long term? And let's make sure that we're putting funding to these things at a specific time, so that there's always some movement, always some activity, always an announceable, always a deliverable that you can point to, right? Because he's going to have to, if he's going to keep on having the public following him on this, he needs some quick wins, right? And a certain number of them, and he needs to be able to, he can't say, okay, we've decided, we've done this, and then the news about it goes dark for 2 years while the contracts are being written, and then we forget about it, and then it's 2 years of a vacuum where we're going, well, you said you were going to happen, where is it? This type of thing, right? As the Chief of Defense Staff has said, recruitment is already going up, right? Based on what has been done before. If this boosts it, right? If 6 months from now, or when the money starts being 6 months from when the money starts being spent, there's a newspaper article or the National Defense comes out with an article says, oh, our applications have gone up by 12% now, or 5% or 6%. That's something that they can point to. Then they could say, hey, see, the strategy is working. We put more money into paying people well and making sure that they would be well taken care of. And look, people are coming. We built it, they come. And so there's going to be a lot of milestones like that, and they'll need these. So while with David Cochran's questions, right, you had a lot of questions about, but like that's not going to make those. This money is not going to make it so that we have all 4 submarines operable in the water. No, but it is going to make sure that there are people there that have the tools and that have the equipment and have received the training. And for some of these cases, it's not only the soldiers that need to be trained, but we need to train to have enough trainers, right? Some of these places, that's where things are at. All of this stuff happens, right? So, for example, if you're training trainers like this and you take 5 to 6 months to do that, and all of a sudden there's a new training unit, you can point to that new training unit, and here's another progress, right? Another win, another deliverable. So these are all elements, and he sees all these specific pieces. And so this is, if you think of it as a 3-layer cake, for example, like this is the bottom layer, right? What can we do now? Making sure you have a solid foundation before you're doing the other ones, putting the other layers on the cake. All right. So let's see, where are we here? So yes, this is with regard to a meeting that, the question will be sort of like, you said that we weren't going to meet an arbitrary number, but this looks like it's an arbitrary number. And one way you can make the argument, right, because he stops at about 2%, right? He could have gone to 2.3, 2.21, right? I guess, but so it does create the impression, but when you look at all the things that this is being spent on, it is in line with what he said before.
Thank you.
Next question.
Hello, Prime Minister. Nathaniel Dove with Global News. You said during the campaign with regards to national defense, you don't start with a percentage of GDP or what can be an arbitrary figure when it comes to national defense. Can you explain why you changed your position so that now we are hitting 2% much faster than you originally said?
Well, actually, it is the same position. It's looking at all of the elements on the ground, starting with the very basic elements of the foundations of the Canadian Forces. Pay, the lodging, munitions. I'm being simple, but I could give you a very large, just the day in, day out experience, both of the individuals, the support they have, the support our veterans have, but as well the equipment that they have on in protecting us on the battlefield. We see the strains. For example, with respect to the relatively limited operational readiness of some of our aircraft broadly speaking, with respect to all that's being called on our military right now, including with the fires. And I want to full credit to the 2 individuals and the people they represent behind me for the full support they have given in massive evacuations and timely evacuations working with the provinces. But we need to build up that capacity, and seeing that, knowing that, and knowing we can act on it makes sense to act now. And then the second thing is the scale of the what I would call the enhancing our military capabilities across cyber, AI, critical minerals, other elements of that. There is an immediate need or immediate opportunity now. It happens that puts us in a position where we're not just at 2, we're above 2, probably rounded to 2.1% of GDP, okay, for what it's worth. last thing, if I can say, is that I did make the point about, within the context of a broader negotiation within NATO, about longer-term targets, and that's something that's under discussion, is that we're going to be guided by what's necessary. Again, we're going to keep the same principle, not to satisfy, all due respect to them, NATO accountants, some magic number. It is about the results.
So speaking of the NATO accountants, you said that this morning as well. Mark Rutte, I think on Wednesday last week, NATO Secretary General said that we can forget about keeping ourselves safe with 2%, and allies now are discussing 5% overall of GDP spending, 3.5% directly towards defense. When will Canada meet those new numbers? And if not, what message does that send to our allies when we are now, I suppose, meeting 2%?
Well, first, we are meeting 2%, and that is the NATO target as it is today. Secondly, as you just said, NATO allies will be discussing what, in addition, and there will be, we can see from our own needs, our own requirements over the medium term, that we will need to spend more, in our judgment, more relative to GDP. So we'll have discussions about how much that more is and what's the horizon over which to have those bigger numbers. And the Minister of National Defence was just at NATO in the last few days and had some of those discussions. But it'll be about results. And I'll make one final point here, which is, importantly, a component of that increased spending is what's called a defence industrial pledge. 1.5 percentage points of GDP that's spent on everything from resilience through to really foundational elements of defense, critical minerals, and it could include things like AI, quantum, other elements. We feel very confident that we are in the zone of already meeting that requirement. We also have a strategy, and look, we've got the signalers here, we've got expertise literally in the room. We have a strategy that's looking to really build on those elements anyways. So I think we're at 2. That extra 1.5, in that case, defense industrial pledge, is something we feel very comfortable about, both the need and our ability to deliver on that. When you move beyond that, it'll be a discussion, and it's this discussion about results. Defense is it literally is to keep our citizens secure, and we'll do what's needed. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. So again, right, it's not necessarily about satisfying the NATO accountants, again, building on stuff and making distinction between another metric while we're behind, right, on the overall 2% on what's going specifically to equipment and whatnot, and certain specific type of spending. We're already there and we're building upon it. So even in the spending that we were doing that was not insufficient overall, we were targeting some of that spending, at least to make sure that a core commitment within that was met and kept up with all along, which is something that doesn't get reported on very much here in the news. Interestingly, at this point, there are some questions about some things that have nothing to do with this defense thing, which I would have thought with an announcement this big that all of the questions would have dealt with that. But no. So there were a couple of other questions about other issues of the day that, I could show because they are definitely interesting, but they're not particularly related to this topic. And I think I can maybe save them for another time. Because we are getting a little long here in the show. But there are 2 more answers that he gives in this that are very important. One of them is about the capacity to actually get money out the door. And this is one of the main concerns right now with regard to this, because when you're putting a lot of money out the door in one shot, there's a lot of opportunity for things to go wrong, right? We saw this in the COVID period when the then Prime Minister Justin Trudeau said, listen, we're going to have to put a lot of money out the door fast, and not everybody who applies and gets approved are probably qualified, but we'll have to fix that at the end because it's important to get this money out now. And we had to take people public servants that were working in certain departments and move them over temporarily to other departments to add extra manpower there, right, in order to be able to get that money out. That's been an issue at National Defense, is having the bodies there to actually manage all the procurement projects and all that kind of stuff to get the money out. So hence there's going to be a dedicated office for that. But also, right, you just need to get the bodies there. So either, funds could be committed and they actually don't get out and then they roll over, and that's not great because you get the hit from the announcement of saying that you're going to reach the 2%, but you didn't because the money didn't get out the door, right? The announcement's nice, but money has to flow through bank accounts for it to actually be spending, right? And not just announced spending. So, and it's a real concern. This is one of the places within the structure that does absolutely need to be shored up. So with regards to that, I believe let's see if I've got the right timestamp there, and what the Prime Minister had to say. So I'm just going to move this over right here. I believe I have it correctly. Whoops, might be just a little ahead. So you might get a couple of extra words or syllables or something. But yep. Oh, actually, that would have been a lot more. There we go. There we go. Now we'll fix that. And here we go.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Last question.
Good afternoon, Mr. Prime Minister. Jamie Strachan with CBC. Obviously, we're talking about a lot of money here, over $9 billion. Are you confident that DND has the capacity to actually spend it?
Well, thank you, Jamie. That's one of the issues. It's been a historic issue. It's one that we looked at closely in terms of designing the package of measures here. Some of it is very spendable, if I can put it that way, in the short term, going directly to personnel as an example, directly to munitions, places where there's capacity. Some will be in partnership with our allies, including Ukraine, where, again, very high degree of confidence there. And there's going to be a great focus on ensuring that this money is as effectively used as possible. Where I'd flag is in those cutting-edge areas around building our cyber capacity, AI capacities, and others. We actually have good programs. We have great opportunities to do those, but they're, in effect, when I say good programs, we have good opportunities, maybe is a better way to put it. And we have great companies that are available for that. But we'll have to do a bit of work to move those out, but we fully intend to do that. And if I can just use your question again to reemphasize, this reform we're making to the Defense Procurement Agency, which will not affect, to be clear, the very short-term spending, but will affect medium-term spending. The motivation of your question is one of the reasons why we're doing that.
Okay, so he is then asked to answer that question in French, which he does do. And of course, because there's a follow-up and the journalist didn't get to ask it right away, the follow-up question will have something to do with regard to readiness and the state of our equipment.
And just a quick follow, just in terms of the money in the here and now and today, how does it make more submarines seaworthy, more land vehicles landworthy today?
Some of it easier on the land vehicles. Literally, when you're don't have the parts and you need to do the repair. I mean, we're in that territory in some of the cases. That's c'est un peu gênant to have to say that, but that's true. Like just.
In French, c'est un peu gênant means it's a bit embarrassing to have to say that.
Getting to the heart of the problem today, in terms of broader procurement, the time horizon is longer than this. But what we're signaling, and maybe I can use this just to in the bigger picture. This is not about getting to 2%, full stop. It's about defending Canada. Our ability to defend Canada is not at a point in time. It's going to require a sustained investment. And as I said in my remarks this morning, we're getting to this level with this 9.3 billion, but we expect a further acceleration of spending. We're going to, we're sharpened our pencils. We're going to go through it. We're going to do it in the best way possible. But we think that this proportion of spending relative to GDP is going to go up somewhat in order to protect. Now, that's important because it'll protect Canadians, but it's also important to send a very clear signal to our suppliers, particularly the ones here in Canada. And it's important, and I think it's the right place to finish, to send a very clear signal to the men and women who are protecting us, that we're going to be there for them, and that there are great careers in the Canadian Forces, and that those careers are going to build over time. Thank you.
All right. And there we go. The last bit, he was asked to mention it in French as well before the press conference ended. And there we go. That's what we have for you with regard to that. So lots of detail, again, in those, well, lots of detail. As much detail as you can give at this stage. But again, not afraid to give fulsome answers, to take the questions head on, not trying to avoid, not trying to skirt them. So we got a lot of meat with regard to that. There was one comment here previously by Breens that caught my eye, because it is something, and I believe Kit Breens did actually say it in the comment. It might be something that's unpopular to say, but it is actually true. I'm just looking for it right now because I wanted to make a note of it, but now it's gone back in time. There we go. Donald Trump has been successful in initiating a change in military/NATO spending contributions. I'm sure this will be an unpopular opinion, as I don't like writing it. It's true, however, right? His actions have served as a wake-up call. Now, he's gone about it the wrong way in every way, shape, or form. And it's sloppy and messy and chaotic. And it's certainly not helpful. And it's not an orderly process. But situation has changed on the ground. People have recognized it. And yes, it has indeed forced people to take this matter more seriously and to do it. Now, he's going to sit out there and he's going to take credit, said, I did this. Well, you kind of did it, but you kind of dumb lucked yourself into it. Right? This didn't have to be this dramatic, if that's what he wanted to get done. Now, then again, he is probably feeling, and you know what? I'll have to give Ambassador Fuckface a little credit here. In that interview that he had with Power and Politics, he did mention there is a reality for the United States going back to their own people, and them being asked all the time. He says, well, yeah, but it's like we're spending like 3-point-something%, and some other people are like, there was a time where there were several nations that weren't at the 2%. So like, why are we doing this? We're being played for suckers, and then we have to go and explain it to our people. Why it is that we're doing that? That is not. As Canadians, sometimes we want to roll our eyes and go, oh, like, come on, yeah, but you're the United States. You took on this position. You get all the benefits of being the world's, big player, big power, right? You get to boss people around and tell them what to do and convene stuff and say, this is the way it's going to be. It's like, it's not like you're getting nothing for that investment. And it's not like you're not getting intangible benefits outside defense as a result of that. But it is, in politics, a lot of people like to look at things in isolation, in a vacuum, with a very, very narrow lens, and pretend that no external factors influence that. And that is a difficult position to explain. If the roles were reversed, it was Canada doing that, the same questions would be asked of our government. And it's not obvious to make that case. So there is indeed some truth to that. One could even argue that there was a need for it, but it did not have to be done like this. It didn't have to be done in the way that, well, maybe we just won't be your allies anymore. or maybe you won't. Maybe we won't pick up the phone when you call, type thing. That type of uncertainty and instability that it creates a vacuum that other world leaders who do not necessarily have our alliance's best interests at heart feel that they can move in and take space and start puffing their chest. That was not necessary in order to achieve this. But then again, maybe a certain jolt was needed. And yes, it is, I feel icky saying it too, like this, but in that very, very narrow perspective, yes, this is as a result of Trump and his decisions, no doubt. I'm not sure if credit can be given, but in this case, correlation is causation. Let's put it that way. There's also a comment earlier that we put on screen with regard to, okay, yes, we are meeting our 2% of NATO, 2% of defense spending as required, 2% of GDP spending on defense and security and whatnot as NATO requires. But there's also another part of that that has to do with foreign aid, right? We had committed a long time ago to spend 0.7% of GDP on foreign aid. And foreign aid, of course, it's the diplomatic element that goes along with the military, the soft power, right? In terms of basically the overall philosophy is if we solve problems over there before they get big, because those problems might not come over here. So, for example, if there is a place in the world where there is desertification and there's not enough water, if we could find a way to get enough water, then you will not have the mass migration. And then in that issue to handle, right? If there are some tensions in certain places and that you could put some resources there to try and diminish those tensions, maybe a war won't break out. You won't have a refugee problem. So that part is often ignored, and a lot of people don't see it as having value, but is a key component. Because if people started looking at foreign aid as a key component of national security and defense, preventing problems elsewhere so that they don't manifest in some way over here or create a new problem to handle over here. If we were as serious about that as we seem to be about this, that would be a huge step up. Would be a massive step up. Hopefully, quietly in the background, that is happening too. But it's not as showy. It's not as flashy, right? We don't do this in Canada, but you could have a military parade with all the new equipment you bought with all the money that you spend and showing off, and this is what we got. That's hard to do with foreign aid, right? You can't take the well from Kenya and put it on a flatbed and parade it downtown Ottawa, right? It's not as showy, it's not as flashy, but it is a vital component. And I'm hoping that someone within the government is looking at shoring that up as well. Even if they do it quietly, because you got Pierre just running around and saying, we need to cut foreign aid. Like if we're boosting it quietly in the background and not drawing a lot of attention to it so as to not provoke the conservatives and get them saying stupid stuff on TV, I would be good with that. But I hope somebody's doing it. I hope that is being considered as part of it as well. Because, that would be particularly helpful if we could do. And in this case, if we are doing this military part, the benefits of doing the foreign aid component could be multiplied in that sense. So a very interesting press conference, very interesting question and answer session. I hope, Kits and Cubs, that it was informative and that you were able to get the information that you need from it with regard, because it's not necessarily the most accessible topic. Every now and then But it is a very important one, and it's one that's going to be of increasing importance as we go forward. And, we do have a proud military history, but we don't particularly consider ourselves a warrior nation, right? Pierre was talking a lot about that on TV, and so, during the campaign and whatnot. And it's not particular who we are. Like, we know we can kick ass if we have to, right? But we don't. Our self-image is more of the peacekeeper, right, or the world's Boy Scout, not the warriors that go in and go kick ass and whatnot. Even though we know we can. So, putting all of these elements together, hopefully, gives you an overall sense of where it is that we are, where we're starting from, right? Because again, that's a big thing, right? A lot of people will criticize the fact that we're not at 2% yet. But you also have to look where we started from. We were at below that, and we doubled that, and that got us to 1.3%, 1.37, because our economy grew, and therefore, while the doubling spent, it wasn't keeping up in terms of share of GDP. So, with this together, hopefully, some of these subjects are put to bed, and we can get rid of that noise that's on the national scene and the international scene, and get to doing the things that we need to do, and have the standing that we need to, in order to be, for what we say, to be taken with a certain amount of additional credibility that we might not have had before. All right. Let's see, what else do we have here? Before we go, a couple of days ago was World Oceans Day, and there was something from the Liberals that came out that made me scratch my head a little bit. This is the new minister, if I'm not mistaken, for energy and natural resources. So Tim Hodgson is the person that Mark Carney brought over specifically and asked to recruit, who's been working with him for quite a long time. One of the people that Prime Minister Carney trusts implicitly. And the thing is, well, here it is. I will show the tweet to you. And I found this one really interesting, because I know that a lot of our emphasis is with increasing our prosperity, right? This is the theme. But I think this one missed the mark here. So I'm going to blow that up for you a little bit there, kits and cubs, so that you can see. There we go. Our ports are the gateways to prosperity. On World Oceans Day, we recognize that investing in critical infrastructure like the Port of Vancouver means we can move our exports to trading partners who share our values, not just our borders. Investing in every step of the supply chain will help us build the strongest economy in the G7 while protecting the marine ecosystems that sustain us all. And then there's a video in there, and the video talks about prosperity and all that kind of stuff. What the video doesn't talk about at all is protecting the marine ecosystems that sustain us all. And as you can see, it's put as an add-on at the end. And it just seems to me that on World Oceans Day, which was created because we have sustainable development goals, and it's part of that push, that the focus of the message from the Energy and Natural Resources Minister probably should have been more on the protecting the marine ecosystems that sustain us all part, and less about ports being gateways to prosperity part on that day. So a bit of a missing of the mark on that one, in my view. Also, as I promised, kits and cubs, the image of Monsieur Pierre and the empty cup. If you will see, right here, we notice the hard hat. Of course, we notice the Pierre as Prime Minister, and we notice the cup. And this is, again, Mr. Kaufman's video, like all this various symbolism, but right here, right here, the conservative Canadian flag, it would seem. Interpret that as you will. There was a kid that made the comment that blue flag, I think it might have been Saucy, that blue flag is a red flag. But yeah, a little weird. Again, here we have Kit Christian, who disagrees with my assessment that in this case correlation is causation because of Trump. Here's the causation is NATO, not Trump. I'm sure NATO has a hand in it, but you know, I think that there's probably enough causation to go around. It doesn't necessarily have to be attributed to just one source in this case. But, you know, there might be a valid point there, or an element of that is there. But I wouldn't say no causation at all. None of this wouldn't have happened had he decided not to pull under the rug out from the security that everybody was coasting on. So there is an element. Not saying it was particularly wise or strategic or particularly intelligent or whatnot, but the action did result in people having to make moves. But yeah, there is an element. There's definitely an element there. Shared credit. Definitely. Good point. Glad you mentioned it. Couple of other things before we go, kits and cubs. With regard to what's going on in the United States, California Governor Gavin Newsom says that the state will sue IQ-47 for sending at least 300 National Guard troops to Los Angeles protest against ICE raids, the first such deployment without gubernatorial consent since 1965. Well, it seems that as a result of that, Trump got a little snitty and decided that he's going to deploy 700 Marines to Los Angeles while additional National Guard troops arrive in the city. About 300 were already deployed, National Guard troops, and it looks like he wants to boost that to 2,000 by Wednesday, and with the Marines expected to provide support, but it is still unclear exactly what they will be doing. And yeah, this is definitely very, very, very much concerning. Today, other things that will be going on. The Bloc Québécois has announced that it wants to split up the Liberal government's sweeping One Canadian Economy bill to speed up plans to dismantle internal trade barriers while allowing for more expensive study of changes to environmental assessment rules for major infrastructure projects. So, yeah, remove the trade barriers now, but with regard to anything environmental, yeah, let's split that bill and take more time to look at that. So it's almost like the Bloc is taking on a bit of the responsibilities that one would normally associate with the Green Party, particularly on this file here, because we know that Mr. Blanchet is not particularly fond of either Premier Daniel Smith or the idea of an additional pipeline, at least. Not sure about how he feels about gas pipelines, but an oil pipeline anywhere, pretty much. The bill would create a framework to select projects of national importance that would benefit from a fast-tracked approval process, but the Bloc House leader, Christine Normandin, said she's concerned it would, quote, completely disqualify the provinces from approving major projects as Ottawa would have full discretion over the selection process, she maintains. But she said the Bloc supported separating changes to internal trade rules into a separate bill to allow it to quickly pass through the House because of the broad support those measures had amongst the provinces. Prime Minister Carney says the legislation is top priority for his government and urged the House to pass it before the summer recess, even if that means extending the number of sitting days. I have a feeling that the Bloc would have the support of Elizabeth May with that. I'm not sure whether or not the NDP may or may not. I'm not sure if the Conservative support would happen for that. So this might be an effort from the Bloc, which, while could be useful, I actually see some merit in it. The Conservatives might not allow to pass because, well, they're anti-environment, right? So, and they're not up to help with that at all. I saw some questions here in the chat as well. Like I said, as of this morning, before coming on the show, the Saudi embassy has not confirmed whether Mohammed bin Salman will make the trip to Alberta for the G7, but Mexican President Claudia Sheinbaum has confirmed that she will attend the G7 summit. She says her team is working to set up bilateral meetings with G7 leaders, including US President Donald Trump. Mexico and Canada have both been targets of Trump's punishing tariffs, and the three countries are set to begin renegotiating the Canada-US-Mexico agreement on trade next year. There's also a very interesting interview on Power and Politics the other day, I believe, stating how a relationship with Mexico is not necessarily the best, in part for two reasons. The previous leader, AMLO, I believe, was not particularly interested at all in dealing with Canada. And there have been some tensions here caused by, as we mentioned on the show, certain leaders of certain parties, like Doug Ford, for example, and certain members of the Conservative Party, just saying that, you know what, just cut Mexico loose and let's negotiate a bilateral trade deal, which would be the stupidest thing to do. To put ourselves into a bilateral situation rather than a trilateral situation with the United States. Particularly, I mean, had we done that then, seeing what Trump is doing to us now, we would have had such buyer's remorse. I do not know why the Conservatives keep on offering the worst advice possible, but there we go. So just like Doug Ford the other day saying, like, we need to slap back with the extra 25% tariffs right away. Yeah, right before we're about to make this big announcement and remove noise off the table and whatnot, let's add some more noise with retaliation. Because if we still need to retaliate, we can do it after the G7. But it's like, why would we tie our own shoelaces together before we start running? And Doug Ford was demanding that, right? So the Conservatives' fetish for immediacy and catharsis, was, if we follow them, would get us into so much trouble so often. These are not serious comments. As we mentioned, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky, Australian Prime Minister Anthony Albanese, South African President Cyril Ramaphosa, and Brazilian President Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva have all been invited to attend the summit. So has been the Secretary General of NATO, Mark Rutte, and of course, Mohammed bin Salman, Prime Minister Narendra Modi of India, who has accepted. There's going to be a certain amount, a lot of, like I said, Brad Levine said, families coming, right? Also, going on in the House, for the second day in the row, MPs are going to debate and eventually vote on a motion put forward by the opposition Conservatives yesterday, as well as a motion that will be presented by the Bloc Québécois, because it's its first and most likely only allotted day of the spring supply cycle for an opposition day. And the Bloc will make the case that the federal government should hand over $814 million to Quebec without conditions to compensate those taxpayers for the estimated $3.7 billion spent on the final round of the Canada carbon rebates. I saw some comments there saying that the rebates are back. The rebates aren't back, but the Prime Minister had promised during the election that he would give one final round of rebates, even after the carbon fee had been suspended to help as an affordability measure. To help. So not sure why Quebec is asking for this, given that they weren't receiving the rebate anyway, because they had their own program and the backstop was not applying. But it seems that they feel they're entitled to that. That motion is probably not going to pass at all. What else do we have here? And then, of course, the Conservative motion that's going to be voted on specifically is that the government deliver a budget before the House rises for the summer. This one will be interesting because if the motion, the vote on this motion fails, and this is why I do not know why the Conservatives are doing this. This is really stupid because they had the motion with the speech from the throne where they said that they've already agreed the government to force. They're having opposition day and they're presenting the same damn thing, except this time it isn't urge, right, to present a budget or an estimate. This will be must. We demand that they present a full budget. So if this motion fails, but the first one passed, one, they undo their work because now they can't go around lying that they forced the government to table a full budget in the spring. but they will have lost some of the other opposition members like the NDP who voted for it and the Greens who voted for it because it maybe had economic statement and or budget. If they're just asking for a straight budget, they might lose a couple of the votes that put them over the top, and all of a sudden have a vote that's for them and a vote that's against them. The vote against them specifically on what they wanted, the not watered down one, just the budget. Doesn't seem like a smart strategic move here. But hey, this is the party of waltzing into the room, chin up, ass out. So let's see if they get somebody throws a haymaker onto their glass chin and they wind up on their butts. This just sounds dumb. Of course, the Prime Minister will be in the House for a question period today. He will also chair his regularly scheduled meeting with his front bench team before heading out to the Parliamentary Front lawn for the annual raising of the Pride flag on Parliament Hill, and that will take place at around 12:30. So if you happen to be in the National Capital area and you would like to attend the ceremony, 12:30 is the time that it happens. As we mentioned yesterday, Ottawa Auditor General Karen Hogan will table in the House of Commons her latest batch of performance reports. As we mentioned, it will look at the follow-up to the investigation with GC Strategies and everything they did or did not do with the development and the rollout of the Arrive Can app will be there. Of course, as we mentioned, GC Strategies received a sanction that they cannot bid for the next 7 years for government contracts. Her team will also weigh in on the ongoing bid to deliver Canada's future fighter jet capability, and more specifically, whether National Defence developed plans for the introduction of the CF-35A fighter aircraft into service and achieved progress against them, so that fighter jet capability would be delivered on time and on budget to meet the government's operational commitments. That's a quote. As well as, quote, current and future use of federal office space and management of registrations under the Indian Act. So those are the specific things that will be looked at there. And that should come out at around 3:30 p.m., her press availability there for those interested in that. Supreme Court of Canada Chief Justice Richard Wagner will make his yearly foray onto the Parliament media circuit to update Canadians on the work of the Supreme Court and take questions from reporters. That's already underway. That started at 9 a.m. And the co-chairs and members of the Women's 7, or W7, which is an official engagement group to the G7 representing feminist civil society from around the world, hit the West Block Press Theatre to highlight their, quote, key demands for a more just, inclusive, and accountable G7, and, quote, to urge G7 leaders to act boldly, especially in 3 core areas, namely, 1, standing up for reproductive rights, protest rights, and the safety of women, human rights defenders. Addressing the climate crisis and global militarization with investments that support people and the planet, not fossil fuels and arms, and ensure coherence and accountability across all G7 policy areas, applying a gender lens to both domestic and foreign agendas. Elsewhere on the calendar today, the Parliamentary Budget Office will release what is described as a new additional analysis on the electric vehicle availability standard, which includes updated estimates based on recent policy developments. That will come up and will be posted on the PBO website at 11 a.m. So if you're interested in that kind of stuff. Women and Gender Equality Minister Rishi Valdez will announce fresh federal support for 2 LGBTQI plus communities in Canada at a midday event around 12:30. So that will probably coincide with the flag raising. So nice to see that there. And yes, those are the main things that will be going on. Thank you to iPolitics for providing that type of summary of all the activities that are available today. Also, that thing that we mentioned yesterday about what's going on in LA, that journalist who had been shot with a rubber bullet. Apparently, she is doing fine. I've seen posts from her on the web. So, it hurt a lot, but it's fine. But there is another journalist that I saw an interview with. He got hit with a flashbang somehow. The flashbang didn't hit him directly in terms of the shot, but it bounced off something, whatnot, and then hit. And he had to go to the hospital because he had part of the flashbang casing embedded in his leg. So, yeah, whether they are shooting directly at journalists or in the vicinity of journalists. And this journalist said specifically, when he was asked how it is that he is visible, he says he is always, whenever he doesn't film from behind corners or whatnot and all that kind of stuff. He always does it out in the open. And if there's shooting going on, he always has the camera up like this. And still, he got hit with, I guess, shrapnel from a flashbang. So, again, sometimes we don't appreciate it, but being a journalist is still today one of the most dangerous jobs in the world, depending where it is that you do it. So, yeah, this should not be happening, but it is, and it is frightening. All right, kids and cubs. That's the end of this episode of the Daily Beaver Morning Show. We hope that you loved listening to us because we love making this for you. Remember that sharing is caring and word of mouth is priceless. So please, please, please tell your peeps and poops all about us. We very much appreciate it when you do, when you share our content and include a couple of words of yours. That makes us very happy. Now, kids and cubs, if you are listening to us but don't always have an opportunity to listen to us live, and because you're busy, you're on the go, you've got things to do, well, turns out that we are portable. If you would like to make sure that you can download the ears-only version of our podcast, you just need to scan this QR code that appears on our screen. Thank you so much to the Ray Girl for her support. Or if you are listening, go to podpage.com/thetruenortheagerbeaver with a hyphen between each one of those words. And when you go there, you click on subscribe. And when we have something fresh off the bandwidth, it comes directly to your podcast feed. No fuss, no muss. We make it easy because we like to help. Now, if you would like to help us in other ways, then Kits Cassie, who's returned to the morning chat, thank you so much. It's so lovely to see you. We know that the reason is what the reason is, and yes, but we are very, very happy to have you among us because you're just a veritable ray of sunshine and a wealth of information as well. But Kits, Cassie, and Elaine would definitely beckon you to go to the True North Eager Beaver Media Incorporated YouTube page, where we have some buttons that you can smash with. It's Pride Month. Get freaky. Like, share, subscribe, click them all. In fact, we encourage it. We don't judge. Well, we do judge, but we don't judge you for that. So if you would like to do that, that would help us a lot. Also, if you are listening to us in podcast version and you have the opportunity to give us stars and reviews, all of that helps us with the algorithm. So thank you very much for all that you do to support us. It means the world to us. If you would like to help us in other ways, kids and cubs, we have a little something called the Emergency Hydration Fund here at the Beaver Lodge, where you can make your contribution to fight the scourge that is dry beaver. Dry beaver. Very, very unfortunate situation. So if you would like to do your part to keep your national beaver moist and refreshed and humidified, and all the words, a little contribution would go a long, long way and would earn our undying gratitude. It's worth a lot. So if you would like to scan that QR code that just appeared or surf on down to our coffee page, that's coffee, ko-fi.com/eagerbeaver, and drop a little coinage, that clinging sound as it hits the bottom of the jar makes us so happy. It delights us, and we are very, very appreciative. Of course, kits and cubs, everything that you donate goes back into the show. And if you are buying Canadian and would like to avoid the US CE Tech Pros, a bank-to-bank transfer is the way to do it. Entirely Canadian transaction. And as a bonus, we get 100% of your donation that way. No cut goes to American CE Tech Pros. And we appreciate all that you do there. Now, if you're not able to contribute financially, that's quite all right. Because truenortheagerbeaver@gmail.com is where you can write to us. Not only for the bank transfer, but to let us know what you think about the show. Or to make some recommendations. If you have a guest that you would like us to have on, if you have a topic like C2 that you would want us to address, send it to us. We want to hear from you. And if you want to reach us via our socials, at True Eager at the Blue Sky Beaver Lodge, also on the shitter, True North Eager Beaver on Facebook, our original home. And if you happen to be listening on our YouTube page, either live with the Damn Fam or later at your own convenience, right down here in the comment section, leave us a little something. We read absolutely everything, though we're not able to get back to you. And again, like your donations, all of your suggestions go back into the show and they make the show better. So thank you for all that you do to make us better and to keep us on our toes. We appreciate it. And it's needed. So thank you. Okay, kids and cubs, because democracy is something that you do, well, as you know, if you are in Quebec and you have eligibility to vote in the Quebec Liberal leadership race, voting is underway and continues to the 14th of the month, with results to be revealed next month, July 14th. So please go there. Also, if you are in Alberta, there are 3 provincial by-elections there. I believe the vote date is June 23rd. So please do research your candidates. Very important. And do what you need to do for democracy there. Make sure that you plan your vote. Very important. And bring friends with you. Also very important. As you know, kids and cubs as well, the Red Cross has some appeals going on to help raise money for our fellow citizens, our brothers and sisters who are in Manitoba and who are in Saskatchewan, who are definitely fighting and trying to survive and just get through tough days with what's going on with the wildfires there. There has been some rain, I believe, in Saskatchewan, which has been helpful. Thank goodness. But there is still just so much to do. So, kids and cubs, if you would like to help in that case, remember that the Government of Canada and the Government of Manitoba will match donations to the 2025 Manitoba Wildfires Appeal from May 28th till June 27th. Every $1 donated will become $3 to support the families and individuals most affected by the wildfires, because the federal government and the Government of Manitoba will match. The Government of Canada will also match donations to the Canadian Red Cross 2025 Saskatchewan Wildfires Appeal from May 30th to June 29th. Every $1 will become $2 to support the families and individuals most affected by the wildfires. The Government of Saskatchewan has not yet announced that it will match for some reason. To donate, contact the Red Cross at 1-800-418-1111 via email at wecare@redcross.ca or online at www.redcross.ca. And I will try to put that up here in the chat for you, kids and cubs, so that you can have it on the screen, and it will give you time to note those numbers. There we go. And those email address and all that kind of stuff. Again, if you're at home and you had some time to get a pen and paper, 1-800-418-1111. Email wecare@redcross.ca or online at www.redcross.ca. That's where you can make your donations and do the right neighborly thing. Words of wisdom, kids and cubs. Again, didn't introduce the twins this morning. But they are indeed right here, Chip and Dale. They're here to say hello. Words of wisdom. You know what? This one is for the Oilers. You know what? You didn't have a great game. Little lack of discipline. You had a day where you were a little messy. That's okay. There's always another day. And next day, make like summer. Macintosh. There you go. That's my word of advice. If you happen to have a messy day, that's okay. Pick yourself up, and the next day, go out into the world like your summer Macintosh. And just take it on. All right. It's what I got today. Kids, it could be a tough world out there. So please be kind to and gentle with yourself. And now, one of my favorite parts of the show, audience participation. Kids and cubs. At the count of 3, please say, Mr. Beaver, cue the cog. Oh, such unison. It's amazing how beautiful it sounds when you all work together. I am happy to oblige. You are listening to a True North Eager Beaver Media Incorporated podcast. The True North Eager Beaver podcasts are proudly brought to you by our founding sponsors, the Misfit Mysteries from Corvid Moon Publishing, your source for science fiction, fantasy, and cozy mysteries featuring a broad diversity of characters. CanadianTarot.com, their uniquely Canadian online eclectic tarot community, and The Peppermaster, hot pepper sauces made from farm-fresh ingredients to thrill your taste buds and expand your mind. We are grateful to the Crier Media Network for its support, Pete Jarvis for our artwork, and Paul Joseph Something for our opening and closing sequence music. Little good news here, courtesy of Kit Uncover. Monarch butterfly numbers are up in Mexico after years of decline. While pesticide use in the U.S. contributed to the decline, experts credit favorable weather for recent increases. I love butterflies, so that definitely makes me happy. All right, kits and cubs, that's all I got for you today. Go out and have a most beeferific day. Oh, sorry, I did forget to mention. This name might not be familiar to you, but could be. For those of you who watched Much Music and Music Plus back in the day, and I got this news courtesy of Ed the Sock, there was a VJ. Her name was Juliette Powell. Beautiful person inside and out. And on Much Music, she would often host the show called French Kiss. There was a show that featured Francophone music. And then on Music Plus, she was often the host, as well as regular VJ of Bouge de la, which was basically the French version of Electric Circus. And I remember back in my younger days, actually dancing in studio at Bouge de la. And just a lovely person. Apparently, she passed away on June 3rd of viral meningitis. And it's like I said, maybe not the biggest name, but as someone from my generation who grew up with Much Music and Music Plus and all of that, there was almost several times a week or a daily rendezvous with Juliette Powell, and she was always lovely. So the news comes as a bit of a shock. There's that. Of course, you may have heard in the news as well. Sly Stone passed away, musical legend. A lot of people consider that his might have been the absolute best set at Woodstock that time. And so some losses there. So when Juliette Powell used to end her show called French Kiss, she would always end it with amour. So, in honor of you, amour. All right, everyone. Have a wonderful day. Oh my God, I'm actually welling up a bit. Wow. You never know. Sometimes learning if someone's passing will hit you, I guess. Well, have a wonderful day, everyone, kids and cubs. And we will see you tomorrow.